Smith has some room. No, brought down nicely. Both down. And that's Urlacher with it. Down to the 50. He's got to beat the quarterback. Hesitates. And he's going to go all the way.
This is 365 Sports.
Just outside the 35-yard line. Peterson, the freshman, cutting back. He's going to get there. First touchdown of his career, Adrian Peterson.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Barner is back deep again for the Ducks, and this is a beautiful punt. Back to the 50 and running backwards, loose, free ball, touchdown, LSU. Matthew picks it up and runs in, and LSU strikes.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Favre rolling and throwing under pressure, and it's intercepted. Dion, he may score right away. It is Sanders for the touchdown.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
White darts up the middle. Pat White in the open field. Pat White to the house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. And what a tough show this might be. But again, it's the calendar. One season flips, you start something else. It's the week of the Masters. We mentioned baseball, of course, has started. Eventually, both the NHL and NBA playoffs. And some of you who watch us say that you don't care about that. But that's okay. You know, that also means towards the end of April, spring games, either non-scrimmages or whatever. And next thing you know, we're into the NFL draft, of course, at the end of this month. A lot of things to get to. Craig will join us a little bit late today. He had that dental appointment, and he needed to get that done. That's why he missed a couple of shows yesterday or last week. So he will join us when he gets here. And all I want to say is, I don't have any blood that is from anything University of Houston other than the fact that we cover the Big 12. And I love Kelvin Sampson. Knew Guy V. Lewis, who's from Arp, Texas, back when he had those great teams, the Phi Slamma Jamma and company, and got to know him. Oh, my God. I mean, we've had guests. How many times have teams that just kept on getting close? And now Houston's lost 3 championship games, Paul. 83, the Jim Valvano moment that really, truly kind of created Cinderella. Magic and Bird were a few years prior to that, but that's what really kind of created Cinderella. And then Georgetown the next year was better. And then last night, with what they do, they close out. They don't make bad mistakes down the stretch. It's how they caught Duke and passed them. And they just could not make and made big-time mistakes in the last 4 minutes of that game. Florida, congratulations on the national championship.
You know, I won't say that out loud. You know what you and I and Craig did a Midway team a few years ago that made all their mistakes in one stretch of a game.
Championship
game.
Yep.
In the championship game, it was in one quarter of the championship game. The second, third, and fourth quarters, they played really well. But every mistake that they saved up for all year, they made in the first 12 minutes of the game.
All of them uncharacteristic.
Yeah, all of them uncharacteristic. And I thought of 2 things that I've personally seen. That, and I thought of Hunter, R.J. Hunter in Baylor, where it was very similar to what was going on with Walter Clayton Jr. last night, where you'd almost want him to score like 7 points in the first half.
Yep.
So that when he does, score 8 or 10 at the end, or like he's not in a slump, and the averages don't come back right at the end when they're just close enough to you where that's going to make a difference. When they were up 12 and didn't make it, 16 or 18, that's when Florida, felt life. That intentional foul kind of woke Florida up a little bit. And it was like 11-1 foul calls for a little while. I'm not complaining about the refereeing about what they called or anything like that, but it was a ref show in the second half after not being in the first half. So it was a very uneven game when it came to that, which just made for viewing it kind of choppy. I don't care about the result. I don't think it affected that much. It was a one-score game. But to see how it ended and for them to make mistakes on their last 3 possessions, which they never do all at once, just kind of brought some of those memories back.
We got a couple of tweets to summarize the game as far as maybe with stats or moments. Jeff Borzello with this one. Houston had 4 turnovers in the first 36 and a half minutes of the 40-minute game. They had 5 in the last 324, including 3 times. L.J. Cryer went down the baseline, got caught in midair. No options. At least try to throw it out and let it go. Florida with a turnover, a steal. Then Emmanuel Sharp driving, which normally that's what he does well, or he hits the 3. That's another story. Had one just kind of come off his hands, turnover. And then again, of course, the end of the game, when Walter Clayton made an unbelievable defensive play, flying in. That guy, you got to get him to go play. Of course, he could have played football, and that's a thing we'll have here in just a second. But just a terrible ending for a team with so much experience and leadership. But Sharp and Cryer and others just could not make the play, and give Florida credit because it looked like they were on the edge of just not having enough time. Just like you thought that Houston didn't have enough time. And they did, just like you thought maybe Florida against Tech didn't have enough time. Sorry, too soon, but it's true. Now, speaking of Walter Clayton, not one of his better nights, but he didn't let his offensive struggles affect his defense, making that last play. Here is who he was coming out of high school. A 0-star basketball recruit. Replaced rejected SEC football offers to pursue basketball. So you know he's an athlete because the SEC and all power, it could have been anybody. Described by Iona coach Rick Pitino as fat, slow, and can't shoot, but could pass. Transferred to Florida when Pitino left for St. John's, and now Walter Clayton is an NCAA champion and is a phenomenal player. I don't know what he can do in the NBA, whatever, don't know. But the guy, despite offensively, Richard saved them for the first half or so, made a few shots, made a huge 3 coming out of a timeout, and then made the big defensive play too.
Yeah, really wish he would have gone to St. John's. So does Rick Pitino and everybody in New York City. But look, he's from Lake Wales. He is really, you know, when you are that kind of scorer and that kind of player, you can have stretches, but it's coming. Like, that's the thing. And I do think that the players on the bench know that. Going back to the R.J. Hunter story, a couple years later, I'm in the Cowboys locker room talking to Rico Gathers, and, you know, we just started, he was like, hey, did you...
Tell everybody who R.J. Hunter is.
R.J. Hunter. Yeah, from Georgia State.
Yeah.
You know, that Baylor was winning. Like, they completely shut him down. And then the last 3 minutes of the game, 4 or 5 minutes of the game, he just went
yep.
I mean, it's like one of those, like, kung fu movies where, like, the guy's just moving around and, like, nobody can hit him, and he's hitting everything.
And he won the game with
a
long 3.
It was like that movie Pleasantville with Tobey Maguire where he's, like, just sinking everything in.
Right.
And so I'm talking to Rico Gathers, and he was like, hey, were you in Tulsa or wherever I was? I was like, yeah, I was there. And I said, hey, let me ask you about Jacksonville. And he's like, oh, man, that keeps me up at night. And I said, yeah, I bet it does. I said, so you guys were shutting him down. He's like, you know, the problem is that we could not put out of our head when we noticed that he hadn't scored that much. He's like, all it took was one guy looking at the scoreboard and going, oh, he's 1 for 11? Oh, man, we're doing it like, and then it's like, oh, crap, he's eventually going to hit some of these shots, which he did and went over and over and over again. And so I was thinking that about Walter Clayton last night. You got to think like, man, we're really doing a great job shutting him down. Nobody else, like, you know, nobody else is really scoring either, but, you know, this whole team, the offense runs through Walter Clayton Jr. I mean, 34, you know, against Auburn, a really good defensive team in Auburn. And to not have him even, like, he would not have even gotten close to 34, given where they were. And then at the end of the game, he made enough shots, he made enough plays, and he made a brilliant defensive play on the last non-shot to get in Emmanuel Sharp's head. I don't know if Emmanuel Sharp had to hitch the ball or not. I've not seen an angle where Walter Clayton definitely wouldn't hit the ball.
Oh, no, he was right there. It would have been like a defensive end batting down a pass. He was right in his grill.
But he didn't hit the ball. Emmanuel Sharp just dropped it.
Yeah.
So he probably would have, but it wasn't definitive, but he just took the best angle, got in his head, he drops the ball, and then that's not a scenario you practice where, hey, you went up for a jump shot and dropped the ball, what do you do now?
Yep.
So then it's just a mad dash on the floor, and, every 10th of a second that ball just rolled was, tick, gone, no national championship in Houston. There is no joy in Mudville, and that really just sucked for the Cougars because – if you're going to lose, I've always said this, I would rather just get shelled so I knew that, you were never in it than lose 2 of the 3 ways that they've lost national title games on the moment that built March Madness and another wild comeback in the tournament this year.
Well, I can't imagine if you're a Houston fan, if you slept much last night or if you just eventually passed out. So then think about being a player or somebody a part of the program or Kelvin Sampson and his staff that includes his daughter and son. They had a great run, but, man, could not close it out. And Florida made plays. They brought a player in that just kind of helped give them some space on offense and created problems on defense. We've all had favorite teams right on the cusp of winning a championship and then have probably experienced this moment. Not in the semis, not in the first round, not in a bowl game that, wasn't for a championship, but in a championship moment, gut-wrenching losses. And I know Houston has to feel that way 42 years later from what was one of the worst of all time in the loss to Jim Valvano and NC State. But it just keep plugging away, and Houston will, and they've got a lot of players coming back. I'm not going to do what's the early top 25. Houston would be in it, but we will discuss them as we get into the off season.
Okay.
Florida, by the way, first national title since 2007. They won back-to-back. Eerily similar to who they were then, except that team had a lot more star power.
Okay, if you're going to tell me who the early top 25, and look, Jeff Borzello did this too. Jeff Borzello has Houston ranked number 1. Okay, who's going to be on those teams next year?
Don't know.
Okay.
Yep.
Although, there we go.
Everyone,
I mean,
you're going to have 3 or 4 come in, 3 or 4 come out, and you might have more than that. And you might be fortunate like Duke and just restock it with a bunch of young players out of high school.
You're essentially ranking coaches here is what you're doing when you do an early top 25 for basketball because, Borzello has Houston and Purdue and you got Louisville, which is interesting, but you are ranking coaches. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, and you're probably ranking programs. They do that in college football all the time. Kelvin Sampson, after the game, there was a video of him that was sad. During the last 20 seconds, during the last possession, when Houston was down by 2, and they came out of the timeout, and they're taking their time, and they get they're right there near midcourt, and he just stood there, probably knowing that somebody was going to make a play, and if they had something that was guarded, somebody else would make a play. And it almost looked as if he was frozen in time. And then, of course, then you had the Emmanuel Sharp non-shot, the turnover, the ball to the ground, whatever, and he just said, you got to be kidding me. So Todd Golden's in his 30s. Kelvin Sampson's 69, and Golden has a championship, which is, you never know. But after the game, Kelvin Sampson was asked about the final possessions.
Going through your mind right now? Big picture.
Yeah, I'm just going through those last 2 possessions more than anything else. It's incomprehensible in that situation. We couldn't get a shot. Gotta get a shot. We're down 2, and obviously we didn't need a 3. But with Emmanuel, we were struggling to score the entire second half. We got good looks, but Florida was doing a good job running us off the line and forcing us to score it. But we just didn't do a very good job of finishing some shots. You know, guys that's been in the paint, scoring all year. You know, OJ's developed a really good runner, floater. I didn't go very much tonight. Milos, but you know, give Florida credit too. You know, I'm not going to sit up here and poor mouth and pity mouth us. You know, we held that team to 65 points. You know, Clayton and Martin combined to go 5 for 20. If you'd have told me we'd hold those two guys to 5 for 20, and we had a good plan. We just didn't score it well enough to win. We scored it well enough to be in a position to win. But you know, it comes down to those at the end. You got to get a shot. That's you got to do better than that.
By the way, you could tell. You could tell he had been crying. You could tell he was devastated, as a lot of people have been. There's some noise in the background. I want to, just in case you hear it, because we do. There's somebody above us. This is a 3-story building. We're on the bottom floor, ground floor level. We've been here now almost 5 years. 4.5 years is when we moved in here. And we have rarely had any noise. There's been jackhammers outside or whatever, maybe occasionally a siren. Somebody upstairs is like renovating whatever that is, an apartment above us, and so that's what you're hearing as we also today do the show. So then there's this Kelvin Sampson moment during the game when you have the in-game interviews. Listen to what he said here.
Getting it done defensively, scoreless from the three-point line, though. Is it something they're doing, or how do you have to adjust?
No, it's the same team. I mean, I don't think they made a three yet either. We haven't made a three. It's nerves. It's championship night. It's in the middle of the January against Sasquatch State. I mean, it's national championship. They're going to be nerves. Both teams will settle in.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, Sasquatch State. So this is what I received a tweet from Trumwill, and that's who Sasquatch State would look like if there was a Sasquatch State.
Yeah, I saw the Sickos Committee actually made a Sasquatch State T-shirt, which Toy Poodle Conference is another one. That was Saturday night, what he said. But Sasquatch State, I think this is merch that's going to come. It's gonna be.
I'm thinking the whole time, why have I not already bought that? Like, just to have it, just to like hang and go to the gym wearing that, or a T-shirt or something like that. But he's had those things during this tournament. He had that one. The other one was Lollipop Universe. What was the one about?
Poodle Conference.
Toy Poodle Conference. God, I love him. I hate it for him, but also know Florida with a huge, huge second half to do what they had to do. Now, there was a couple of notes about the game. I am not, and you know this, I am not one to ever, even if it's a call that ends the game or non-call. However, in the first half, Dennis Dodd put this up. In the first half, there were 4 fouls the entire first half. Now, it looked like a rugby scrum. It at times looked like it could have been like WWE wrestling. That's the kind of play that Houston likes, and Florida can get physical too, because they did. But there were 4 fouls in the first half when they called the technical foul in the Florida bench, because it was on really what appears to be an assistant coach that came beyond where he should have been. Golden kind of looked around after the young man slammed the ball and it did not catch it and went up in the air. That was a technical foul. That was a critical part of the game. But after that, 11 of the next 12 calls went against Houston, and 3 in 9 seconds. And I think that kind of spooked them a little bit. And also, by the way, they had no foul trouble, and then all of a sudden they did. It was something I think that I saw a lot of people who were not even just fans, but people tweeting this out. And I just thought that the consistency of the game, and as somebody told me when I texted him, it's a former official, you have to adjust, the officials have to adjust, and the players have to adjust if, in fact, the officiating does too. So there we are with that stat on the fouls. We've done that. Here is a retired stockbroker was at the game last night in San Antonio. Houston alum, Letterman. That was his view. Pretty damn good at the Alamo Dome to watch the game with Florida beating Houston for the national championship. We have to get to my bracket. We just do. I know, Paul. People don't like braggarts. No, this is not a show-off. This is me being the worst ever since there were brackets before there was even anything internet. You know, you had your brackets. There was the bracket, and you filled it out, and you turned it in. Everyone maybe put in $1 or $5 or $20, whatever. I never won this before. Never. If I would have been the only person in the bracket, I would have lost that too. I have, Paul, you know this, by usually the end of the first afternoon and by surely the second afternoon, my bracket is toast. And it was a little bit wobbly, but since the Sweet 16, I did not, and this is stunning to me. This is not me bragging. This is once in a lifetime. Did not miss a game from the Sweet 16 to the Elite 8 to the Final Four to the championship game. And I wish I would have missed the championship game.
Yeah, I got the championship game right. And that was supposed to be the, salve on the burn that, the biggest rival that my alma mater has makes the effort in basketball, and we don't. And I came in 5th. So
how many people in the deal?
It was like 100, and it was a lot. I would have won a lot of money. And
for 5th place?
No, if I had won. Had I won.
Okay.
And what kept me out of winning, I believe, was 2 games, Auburn and Michigan State, and then he had one other random one. Like, I'm looking at the bracket. I'm like, our bracket's exactly the same except for 2 games.
Yep.
It was Auburn and Michigan State, and then another rando early in the tournament, like UC San Diego, Michigan.
I took a couple of flyers, but they don't really cost you much because then you get 320 points. Not that I picked the flyer. I think I also had maybe Colorado State winning. They lost at the buzzer. Wasn't it? Who was that? Maryland, the Queen hit the shot. So those are the things that happen. But I wanted to put that out there that I'm stunned, but I've like 99. Garrett, I don't know why you had to take that down. 99.9% is what I got right, and I was still 17,171. I gained like 100,000 in the last 2 rounds, but there were 25 million people, so that's not a bad number right there. I was thinking, I was going to wake up today, and I had an email from ESPN Bracket Madness that said, hey, by the way, we need your bank account so we can put money. No, but somebody was perfect. And if there was ever a tournament to be perfect, it's this one. So and so somebody was able to be perfect on that. How much money would you have won? 1,400?
Yeah, like $1,000. Maybe more. I don't know. Like it was a lot of people in this thing.
We're going to do this now because Craig hates talking about it, and I'm tired of talking about it. And a lot of people are talking about it. Garrett's tired of looking at it. What do you want to do?
I think he's sitting in the car right now waiting for us to get talk about it. Yeah,
I don't know if he ever looks at the rundown, to be honest with you.
No, but I mean, he knows we're going to talk about it. So and if he's like, if the dentist is running long.
Yeah, no. I'm going to call his dentist and find out when she released him like 3 hours ago. But I'm glad he's getting that fixed because it was kind of one of those things when a tooth falls out. Now, the House settlement. How many of you, tell me in the chat room, and we'll get to this, how many in the chat room are tired of even talking about it, even if, like some of you like me, thought something would be done by yesterday? This might be another day, it might be 3 weeks. How many of you are just sick of this? Other than just you're sick of the way maybe things are without too many rules or what's going to happen. So, Ross Dellinger, there's a couple of summaries here. So Judge Wilkin, who's the one that Paul did the Ed O'Bannon case, am I right? Was it Ed O'Bannon?
She did the O'Bannon. That's why they filed this case.
No, it might not have been O'Bannon.
She did Alston maybe, but she's done one of them.
She did. It was 11 years ago.
There's a reason that it was filed in her court.
Yeah, she was. She was the one that was in the courtroom with O'Bannon, the lead attorney of O'Bannon. Now, so Ross Dellinger, who's been a part of this, I want to mention Sam Ehrlich, Amanda Kristovich, Mitt Winter, a guy named Joe Sabin that we might have on tomorrow.
Oh, he just made it.
Oh, perfect timing.
He just made it.
So just a quick summary, and then I hope that we might shut this down with an occasional guest. So Claudia Wilkin, the judge, gave the indication after it was 6.5 hours that she would approve the settlement if changes are made to the roster limits, which we brought up yesterday, possibly phasing them in instead of it's boom, there's a cut down date like what Chris Kleiman mentioned, and the inclusion of future athletes in the class. We are tweaking that language. Now, why the second one? I think the roster limits will absolutely be phased in. She made that clear that she would want that. But the future athletes, you go, well, why do they need to be a part of this? Because if you're a 10-year-old who's out in the yard playing like, I don't know, soccer, or you might end up being a hockey player or whatever, you have no say in what will affect you when you're in collegiate athletics.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that Judge Wilkin is a little bit concerned about. It's a 10-year settlement. It's not like forever. It's a 10-year settlement. So those are some things that at least will have to be nibbled a little bit when it comes to whether or not she passes this when they get those corrected or rewrite the language.
And this is what I will say to the leaders of college football. It is a 10-year settlement. That means that you have 10 years. She's given you 10 years of runway when this thing gets approved to figure it out. You have 10 years under this kind of structure. So, you know what? The smart thing would be to do is get it done in 5. Or you could.
Yeah, get it done in 5 and maybe even renegotiate it with everybody agreeing to it before you go back in front of a judge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, get it done. You know what you have to do. Stop relying on Congress. Do it yourself. In fact, the message that you've gotten from Congress is, hey, can you guys just come up with a plan? And then if you do the thinking for us, because I don't know if you guys know, we're not thinkers here anymore.
Yeah.
It's not what we do. If you come up with a plan, then we will just take that and then we'll have our interns make it into a bill, and then we'll pass that bill.
They'll never
but
get
if
to
you
that
want
point.
us to come up with the idea,
Yeah.
you are out of luck.
You are screwed. Craig, thank you for joining us. By the way, there's some hammering going on upstairs, so I've already kind of mentioned that. Here's one quote or a part of a paragraph in Stuart Mandel's article in theathletic.com on this today. Boosters aren't going to stop buying recruits just because their favorite school now has $20.5 million available. Lawsuits will fly the first time that Deloitte, who's going to be the one that manages the value in NIL, tells Phil Knight or Larry Ellison or Texas Tech's billionaire oil booster. For Kim and Katie and all of you Tech fans, they used it singular too. Their NIL deal for a transfer quarterback is above fair market value. The transfer portal won't slow down. Stuart Mandel put that in. He did a really good summary today of what occurred yesterday and what, if any of it, means.
Yeah.
You missed most of it. Just good.
Good.
Yeah. We thought you were in the car waiting for us to finish talking about it.
I thought you were listening going,
and then maybe you're like, oh, they're almost done, and then you jump the gun.
Roll Tide.
Well, first of all, I'm wearing all black today. Still go Cougs all day. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in terms of this, I wish I had been listening on the way over here, and if I had realized when I pulled in the parking lot this is what y'all were talking about, I would have sat in there for another 5 or 10 minutes because – this is, as y'all know, not my –
we did a very smart –
not my bag,
very short
and
summary.
I know it's not really y'all's at this point either, but I know it's something that we've got to talk about. So as we discussed in the text, like let's talk about what we need to talk about and then, go from there. But I'm glad they're making some level of progress, or at least there's some clearer picture than there was this time yesterday. I don't know what it all means, obviously, or the timeline of it all, but I don't know. Was it good news yesterday? I mean, could y'all at least wrap your heads around that? I mean, is it?
The judge, for the most part, said something about, remember she said, don't quote me, about how she thought it was in a position to be passed, but she wants tweaks to 2 things. The roster limits that need to be phased in or grandfathered in, and future revenue for athletes who are not even a part of college right now. She wants them protected in some way. How they'll do that, I don't know. Other than that, Title IX doesn't matter. NIL doesn't matter. Any of the stuff that is not a part of what that specific lawsuit's about doesn't matter. That's for some other day.
Okay, well, congrats to the lawyers on what a big year in college sports has been for you guys. Because I'm sure this is very, very – I mean, it's interesting to an extent. It's just I don't think this is why any of us got into covering sports or college sports, was to talk about the lawyer stuff. And yet that's where the NCAA has led us all these many years. So congrats to the legal folks on this boon in this new cottage industry that's popped up seemingly with NIL and everything else that's accompanied it. And I'll be glad when it's all over, but I honestly don't feel like that'll ever happen. So I think the lawsuits will continue basically based on what you're saying, just they will take a different path than the ones that these have been taking. And again, the lawyers win at the end of the day. Hopefully the student athletes are we still doing that? I guess the athletes do as well. I mean, they're clearly winning a lot here lately. It sounds like they'll continue to. And all I want, man, is just to get to a point where we're not talking about lawyer stuff every week of the year in regards to college sports and them trying to figure out what they can or cannot do.
We're not going to talk about it again. Again, I mean,
well,
on this show,
we have a guest, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about today's show.
I mean, look, if it's valid, if there's a reason to, I just don't think any of us are interested in small talking about it more than we would be like the game last night or something. But I mean, yeah, if there's something that's important that needs to be discussed, then I'm not opposed to that at all. I know for me that after a while, if it's kind of the same thing, like if we had been talking this settlement and will it, won't it for a daily basis, I mean, that's just going to wear on you, right? And kind of take the enjoyment out of it. So it's a part of it, but hopefully it's a little bit lesser of a part of it moving forward based on the House settlement getting cleared in some form or fashion sooner rather than later.
A couple of the comments in the chat room, and I asked before we started to discuss some of these little nuggets. Are you tired of it? And a lot of you are tired of talking about it. I don't even understand it. We need regulations. Just tired of the trajectory of college sports heading. We need a government carve-out. Gutless administrators and coaches, not even talking about Congress because it's not on them, among many others. Not my fault, Kim, that Stuart Mandel didn't do his homework on the group of billionaire oilmen. But even see, some in the national media look at it as if Cody Campbell is the guy, and he's not, with Womble and many, many others. So there we are. That is what we wanted to do with a very tightly wound summary the next day. Now let's do some. There's one other note about a former player who transferred after 4 years at Stanford, Dejanay Carrington, who went from Stanford and played at Baylor. She was in the WNBA, and I think she still might be. She has been playing. This is from a former player when it comes to the transfer portal. I think there should be a one-time transfer rule. You get one freebie. After that, you have to redshirt a year. We used to have to graduate or sit out a year in the first one. What do y'all think? Well, then somebody came back and said, well, what happened to you? You transferred. That's not what she said. She had the one transfer. She went from Stanford, and she then went to Baylor and played at Baylor. Was a fantastic player at both places. But that's from a former player looking back at it, which about maybe 4 to 5 years later.
I actually think the one-time transfer and the infinity transfer people are both kind of wrong on that. I think the infinity transfer is really wrong. But the one-time transfer, to me, I think it's a lot easier. If you collectively bargain, you can merge this of, yeah, you can go, but you have to have a buyout. You have to do all these other things, sign contracts and keep them. If you're going to build a pro sports model, do what pro sports does. And then I think it would slow down the transfer portal because you'd have all these buyouts that kids are not going to want to do.
Yeah,
I have no problem with somebody that needs to transfer once. Look, a lot of people who are just regular students transfer, and I think that's been brought up plenty of times, and it's a valid part of the argument of, why are athletes so restricted compared to their counterparts? And obviously that finally changed in regards to NIL and the transfers. But the unlimited transfer folks, I don't think that they really have anybody's best interest in mind other than their own love of chaos, because there's people out there, they just love messiness, and messiness can be fun. Messiness can be entertaining and interesting, but you come to find out there's people that they just want messy all the time. I don't know if it's like a deflection thing or it's a escape or whatever, but I just don't know how you enjoy seeing people go to 4 schools in 4 years. Like the Kirk Harissa thing. Like, he seems from all indications like an incredibly well-liked young man, and the teams that he's played on, they all seem to like him and enjoyed him. And yeah, he's not a perfect basketball player, but the attributes that were positive really showed through. And yet at the same time, does anybody need to be at 4 schools in 4 years? I mean, what are we talking about? Honestly, if we're just being honest and we're saying, can we just call out BS every once in a while? Nobody needs to be doing that for any reason. I mean, for any reason, unless you just happen to stumble upon this one in infinity scenario where the school you keep going to somehow keeps canceling the degree you're pursuing, and it happens 3 years in a row. That's about the only reason I see where you would need to go play at 4 places in 4 years.
Or the school you're going to is giving you another $150,000 on top of what you're making.
And I get that, and I get like, well, it's money. You wouldn't take no money. Like, yeah, of course, but I don't know what his profile even is at this point. 4 schools in 4 years, and I don't want to bog down on him because again, he seems like he's pretty well liked, and he's just a symptom, not the problem. But you look at that and you're just like, what are we talking about here? I mean, 4 schools, like, what are you even accomplishing? I guess you're making a lot of money. I don't know, but I don't know. The people that are making a ton of money, I think they kind of sit on 2. I think once you go to like 3 and 4, then there's got to be something else at play than just the money aspect of it. I mean, what are we talking about?
And how many, like, these are the numbers I think that coaches, and it like sometimes it sounds negative recruiting, but I do think that coaches really want to get out there for people like, okay, yeah, there are guys who transferred 3 times and it's worked out okay for them. But if your goal is to be a professional basketball player, right? How are you going to get better going to 4 college programs in 4 years? This isn't like you're in professional basketball and you sign 4 one-year contracts and they decide not to keep you. This is you making the attempt to go a different place. And with Kirk Krista, because he's really good, he would still he was going to play at Kentucky again this year. I mean, he was
a good player at Arizona where he was originally.
Arizona, and he was good. Like, he's going to play everywhere. Where he's like, it feels like some guys are chasing that like absolutely perfect scenario. And look, it's rare.
Life's not perfect,
it's not perfect. Like, occasionally, you can fall into a perfect scenario. I know that some of you may look at my life and say, hey,
that's
it's
a
pretty
perfect scenario.
But then I look to my right and realize that it's not. So what I'm saying is that sometimes it can be close to perfect, but,
Listen to this.
The NCAA is trying to put some kind of thing they're going to call the graduation passport to try to create the graduation passport to specifically track academic progress. That's what they were supposed to be doing anyway, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the NCAA doing something, I don't even want to hear it because I don't believe in it, and I'll believe it when I see it. But I mean, to put it this way, when he left his first school, he was a junior. Mm-hmm. He's on his 3rd school since he left as a junior at Arizona. Like, what are we talking about? Like, there's no justification outside of just like, yeah, people keep handing him a bag and he has eligibility remaining, so good for him. And again, he's a symptom, not the problem. I'm not trying to pinpoint just one guy because he's not the only example. I just find it ridiculous. But good luck to him. Good luck to all these athletes getting theirs that should have been theirs long ago and making up for lost time, I guess, in some ways. But I do think that I think you'd find probably plenty of athletes who say that they don't love it when the person's joined their program who's on their 3rd school maybe all the time, or yeah, they themselves just have their own opinion of, hey, I've done it before, and based on my own experiences, I think it'd be kind of ridiculous for you to have to do it more than once or twice. Or, if you do, I think it would be fair. I don't think everybody's got to be stingy and say, well, I want all of what I want and nobody else gets anything. Right. So I think if everybody was being fair, like Dejanay, you'd say, yeah, you deserve at least a free pass, maybe even 2. But beyond that, like, come on, what are we talking about doing here? And that's where I roll my eyes at well, you don't love the players. It's like, no, I love the players just fine. I think you've given them a lot of grass to roam around on. Now you're just going like above and beyond for S's and giggles, basically, or for the chaos of it, I suppose.
Yeah, no,
I don't know how we could discuss it all day. It's until they figure out a way to curtail it, or at least make it a little more difficult just to get up and leave. And then, of course, there's the argument. This really was the argument that made a lot of people think coaches leave all the time. My response back in the day was they're professionally paid coaches.
And
that's their job. And they have a buyout. Either they do or the team that wants to. But
no coach could just go, and I don't, again, it sounds like we're bogging down on the athletes, and this is not interesting enough to keep continuing on. But if a coach jumped for 4 schools in 4 years, there's a lot of buyout money that's exchanging hands across these various universities. Mm-hmm. An athlete can do that, and there's no repercussions whatsoever. So I think the pendulum swung the other way. Let's acknowledge that.
Yep.
That, yes, for a very long time, it was only in one direction. The people he keep using that now at this point, your point's valid, your point's made, but it's also swung all the way back and even further back the other way now. So that's not exactly the strong argument that it was 2 years ago when there was a total lack of player movement.
If you can get money and you're 18 to 24 or whatever they are now, again, it'd be hard not to want to grab that if it's available. Let's do 2 or 3 football stories, college football stories. My interview with Kevin Sweeney from Sports Illustrated, which he had to go into the Houston locker room. It was 45 minutes. It was like 30 minutes later than normal. And then we have Mike Craven from Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine on the tour. He's been to SMU, TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, and I think a couple of other schools. He's going to join us today at 4 o'clock. Sonny Dykes, as they are going through their spring and wrapping things up, this is the deepest team he says he's had at TCU. Program has done a great job evaluating and recruiting, and that's why, according to Sonny Dykes, Stephen Johnson of Fort Worth Star-Telegram, why TCU only took 8 transfers this cycle. They were very aggressive with them a year or two ago. Some of those, not all of them work. Some of them don't work at all. But that's a quote from Sonny Dykes today to Stephen Johnson.
You know, I think that 8 to 12 is the optimum number for roster refresh to me. If you start getting into the 15, 18, 20, 25, 40, that's like when you have a coaching change. But when you have to, change over more than like that, that's where you start wondering, like, okay, how is this all going to fit together? But if you have 8 transfers, that means that, some of them will probably start, and then other ones you probably saw as like, okay, well, this kid, we liked him before. We still like him. Wasn't in their spot. He's back here now. Let's see if we can develop him. So I think that's good news.
I think it also depends on how long a coach has been there, if he's brand new or not.
But, yeah, it's true.
Like Rich Rodriguez, they're going to have 55, 60 or so new players.
Yeah, they are. And that's fun. But, like, year over year, but there are some coaches that have been there for 5 years, and all of a sudden they turn around and they're like, well, we've got to take 31 transfers this year. Yeah. That's not good news. I think 8 to 12 is an optimal number.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he's right. I want every team to be as good as they can possibly be. So they were a bit of an afterthought, even though they won 8 games last year. They just weren't ever really, truly in the mix of the Big 12 race. And yet they had an okay season. It was definitely a bounce back from the year prior when they lost all that talent from the playoff team and then really just struggled mightily, which wasn't a total shock. So you wondered how they'd perform last year with a bit of a chance to regroup, and they went 8-4, and they've got a really good quarterback, and they're always going to have talent because it's TCU. So, I hope they're in the mix and they make a little bit more noise because, quite frankly, even though they went 8-4, I mean, do y'all recall TCU being on the radar of really any talking point last year in the Big 12? Not at all. They were, like, behind BYU. They were behind Colorado. They were behind Arizona State. They were behind Baylor. They were behind maybe 1 or 2 Iowa State. And then you got to TCU. And even then it seemed like they were just sort of, oh, yeah, and there's TCU. So I think they had a better year than they probably got credit for, but I hope he's right because the more the merrier. The more talent, the better teams, the better games, better league, all that, so on and so forth.
All right, there's one other football note, 2 of them actually. Both of them include Texas Tech and their billionaire oil man.
Just one.
Huh?
Just one.
Just the one. There's not 40.
There's not scores.
Yeah. Texas Tech last weekend, I think this is a video of Joey McGuire. Watch what's going on in the background.
Week 12, West Virginia. Week 12, West Virginia.
I think there might be snow there this time of year.
Okay, thank you, Garrett. It was snowing in Lubbock. It does. It's a long way. Ask Paxton. It's almost near Alaska. And what Joey McGuire was planted in their heads was week 12 at Morgantown in West Virginia. Whether the weather's like that or not, they were filling out the practice in bad conditions.
I really like the independent movie vibe. A kid just lost his virginity before he goes to college song they picked there.
Yeah, very early 2000s.
How did you know that?
How did you not? I mean, like, tell me. Do you hear that song, and that's a kid who's, like, really happy?
Paul, the guy who's never seen, like, any major movie whatsoever. He's really big into the independent films.
Yeah,
did Andrew and Emery throw that out? But, yeah, no, you're right. That is kind of that sad kid looking for a girlfriend.
Like, something, like, just happened, and he's, like...
It's like the soundtrack from Boyhood or something.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway... no, that's like...
Well, I loved it. And I think it's sharp that Joey was trying to... it may never happen to be 75 in Morgantown, but at least planting that seed to go through that day.
Week 12 in Morgantown, it's definitely not going to be 75 degrees.
Yeah. No, maybe there'll be a warm front.
Yeah.
Also, Texas Tech over the weekend did pick up one hell of a player. Edge rusher Bailey from Stanford. David Bailey had big numbers. That's another transfer. They already have the #1 overall transfer portal class, and they add that to the list. And to me, this is one of the most dangerous positions. It's one of the hardest positions to find that somebody's really good at this, and he was at Stanford, and now he's playing in Lubbock. All right?
Yeah, we mentioned it last week.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we talked about it. He was likely on his way there, but yes, it's official.
Likely. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well,
so it was Matt Zenitz who reported then, but yeah, it was towards the end of the show at the end of last week, and so yeah, he's there. Nice pickup for them. They continue a really, really good transfer haul.
Last note.
Yeah, it's good on paper, and we'll see what it turns out to in the regular season. But there's even more reason to believe that they have a chance to be really good this year. And like half their 20 whatever transfers, 18 transfers. I don't know what the exact number is at this point. I think it's somewhere in that ballpark. I think half of them are defensive linemen. So and should be, because their defense was not very good. So that's an area of weakness they've attacked and really fortified, and it should pay huge dividends. I still have questions about them. I don't think they're just the rock solid, top of mind choice for the Big 12. I do think they're right there in that conversation. They deserve to be in that conversation. We'll see where we are come July and August when we really start to talk about those types of things. But yeah, they better be in the mix. They better be in the mix, and I expect that they will be. And that's a really nice pickup. And there were some big schools that were in pursuit of David Bailey as well. And I don't think you have to worry about the whole transfer doesn't translate. He's from Stanford. Yeah. I would think that that's a little bit less of a risk than picking up the guy from McNeese State or something who, maybe isn't as locked in. I think a guy from Stanford is going to be pretty, ready to go and do his thing.
We have some, in another segment, men's basketball transfer portal news. Wes Welker's joining the Commanders coaching staff under Cliff Kingsbury on the offensive side, one of the great slot receivers of all time, who played at Tech. That was a note that I saw from Peter Schrager from the NFL Network. So, those are most of the headlines. There's still more, and we, again, feel for any of you who are University of Houston fans after the devastating loss.
Yeah, so was that Wes Welker thing something we're talking about later, or were you saying that right there?
No, that was just all I was
okay, well, that's awesome.
You want to respond to it.
He's going to be part of, the team with Kingsbury. So, as a Commanders fan, I mean, that's cool. Don't know how much of a big difference it makes, but I think that's great that they got to reunite and be a part of an NFL staff here in 2025. So I'm sure that's a real cool thing as well for Texas Tech fans to just kind of be able to look towards or even brag about a little bit, just the reunion there of those two great Red Raiders. So, and then on Houston, I obviously didn't talk about.
You can't be late and then come in and talk. You can't. You
well,
can't.
I mean,
no,
too
go
bad.
ahead and give your because we have an interview that's recorded, so good.
Yeah, I think that sucks, man. That just sucked. That sucked to watch. I felt really terribly for Houston. I mean, it was right there for the taking. I don't really need to expand further. Houston fans know, everybody else knows who watched that game, and at this point it's been probably talked to death all day long all over the country. But, yeah, man, missed opportunity, massive missed opportunity. I don't know what they did. I'm sure y'all mentioned it, what curse they created or stumbled upon decades ago where they just get their heart ripped out on occasion in basketball. But, man, I do feel for them. I was rooting hard for the Cougs, and I really thought that they were going to win that game last night. So kudos to Florida. I mean, they got it done when it mattered most, and they were a really, really good basketball team. So that was a great way to finish the season, even though it wasn't the outcome I was hoping for.
Incredible defensive play by Walter Clayton, who offensively is usually their star, but a very underrated defensive team. Houston gets a lot of credit for what they did. It's a great game, but my God, what a way to blow it. Kim Coulter, Super Chat, thank you very much. We will come back, my conversation with SI.com basketball writer Kevin Sweeney on Houston and Florida and having to walk into that Cougars locker room. About a 30-minute delay from when it normally is supposed to be open by the NCAA rules and regulations. That's next. This is 365 Sports.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this. This is how I wanna live. I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this.
It's the Start Something New sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive home the 2025 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo for just $36,995. Plus, Ford owners get an extra $2,000 Conquest bonus cash. Don't wait. These deals won't last long.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Sweeney, SI.com, Houston and Florida in a dramatic finish last night down in San Antonio. The Gators get it done. Kevin, you were in the Houston locker room. I can't even imagine. I have nothing, like no ounce of blood other than I would like to have seen Kelvin Sampson win a championship. And I even woke up numb. What was it like right after the game?
Man, like it was honestly the most devastating scene that I've been a part of in my career. Like again, just like you, I had no dog in the fight. But like, man, I mean, I was on the verge of tears myself, trying to keep it together. Just, you could see the hurt and the pain. And like, I think what people probably don't understand from the outside is like how tight knit that program is. I mean, it's one of the last true programs in college basketball where guys have been together for multiple years and have been working towards this moment, and to come up just agonizingly short of that goal, I mean, it's going to stick with them for a long time.
I know there was a long delay after the game ended because everybody has to decompress, and there's always a little bit of that time before the coach and players go to the podium and or the locker room is open. Was it even longer than normal after the way that game ended because it was such gut-wrenching loss?
Yeah, the policy is usually 15 minutes from the time that everyone gets back to the locker room. And I don't know exactly what the time that everybody got in there, but it was about 45 before we were allowed in. And obviously that, you know, as reporters trying to do our jobs, that's frustrating. But I also, you know, you have some empathy that they just needed time. And even when we got in there, it was, you could tell they just weren't ready to face the outside world. And I know Kelvin Sampson said that, you know, he really wanted his guys to be, you know, proud of their effort and happy for how they played. He's sad about the loss and didn't want Emmanuel Sharp, who had that end of game turnover, to take the blame. He tried to as best he could. His teammates wouldn't let him. But those moments, you know, behind that big red door to that Houston locker room were really, really powerful.
Yeah, and they're not there without Sharp or without Cryer, without Roberts, or without a lot of them. And Florida, you know, if they don't win, then, you know, people look at, oh, my goodness, you know, how did they have some of their stars not play as well? Let's discuss the end of the game. Houston had 4 turnovers for like 35 minutes and then had 5 in the last, what seemed like 6 or 7 possessions and 3 or 4 in a row. What do you think happened?
Yeah, look, number one, I thought Florida's defense really, really bowed up. And, you know, remember, this is a team that last year ended its season giving up 102 points to Colorado in the NCAA tournament. And this group went on and got tougher in the portal, got some guys who really wanted to compete and defend at a high level, and it worked, you know, smashingly well. But I thought those closing possessions, the big things Florida did were, I thought they did a great job of helping without giving up the open threes, which is such a challenge against Houston. And then I thought their activity with their hands, getting hands on the ball and getting strips, was incredibly important. I thought Houston maybe took too much time off the clock, took the air out of the ball a little bit, limited their options down to 1 or 2 looks. And I thought in those opportunities, Florida was just able to get the better of them.
The last shot by Sharp, it could not have been more like just chaos right there. And then the ball's on the court, and he couldn't touch it. You mentioned that Sampson wanted them to be disappointed, but also be proud of what they did. Did you get a chance to hear from Sharp at all?
I did not. No, he ducked away and wanted a private moment, which we all understood.
Sure.
My understanding was Houston was really happy with the look that Sharp had gotten, and the plan had sort of been just to force Florida to close out hard, and then Sharp could drive it to the rim and try to get a 2. But he was so open when he caught it, he thought, hey, why don't we try to take this 3? And you watch Clayton really come from nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
He flies in for that closeout, and it just spooked Sharp enough that he didn't want to take that shot. Because, again, the plan was, if Clayton had been more attached to him initially, just use that initial step to then drive to the rim. Sharp was almost too open for his own good initially, and then Clayton makes an incredible recovery play.
It seemed like Kevin Sweeney, SI.com, was in San Antonio. Florida wins the national championship against Houston. That the game was a street fight, and I think everyone expected that. Everyone knows how Houston plays, but Florida showed grit throughout as well. But it seemed like after the technical foul on Golden that things changed a little bit, the way the game was called. And, hey, that happens. It's ebbs and flows and all of that. But did you sense that as well? Because 11 of the next 12 fouls were against Houston, and it just seemed like that also was the perfect way for Florida to slide back in the game.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was very frustrated with the officiating just from the standpoint of the first half. it was open season. You could do whatever you wanted. You could be super physical. And in the second half, you come out and there's like 5 fouls on Florida and then the tech in the first 3 minutes.
Yep.
Look, man, like it's completely changed the game. And so I thought, after the technical, some of the calls went back Florida's way. But I think a lot of them were all fouls. Like there was very few plays where I was like, man, I don't know if that's a foul. It was just so striking how differently the game was officiated minute to minute. In all, I think the foul count wound up being relatively similar on one side. But I mean, it was. I didn't think the referees managed the game overall at an elite level.
Yeah, I think Houston ended up with 19-11, but it was. And by the way, I don't even think Golden was good at trying to get a tech. It was after, of course, the ball was slammed to the ground. But man, Houston now, as you know, has been in 3 national championship games. 84, Georgetown was better. This game with an absolutely kick in the nuts, excuse my French, but that's exactly the way it was. And then the NC State game that almost created March Madness with the way Valvano and NC State beat Vice-Lama Gemma. You can keep knocking on the door in some other sports programs. Basketball, they've done that. Duke had to keep doing it. Finally, they break through. Do you feel like Houston is still set up to be right back here next year?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think their roster is going to be one of the best in the country. Maybe even more talented next year than this year because of the freshmen they have coming in. They have 3 top 30 recruits, including 2 5-star McDonald's All-American type of guys. And that's a different type of talent that Houston's had. They've obviously built this thing really on program guys who've been with them for 3, 4, 5 years. But it'll be a big adjustment for Samson, too. I mean, you would love to see him win one before he rides off into the sunset here in a couple of years. But I think they've been consistently the best program in the sport over the last 5. I mean, UConn has the 2 championships in that period, but Houston has never been outside the top 5 in the analytics since the COVID pandemic. I mean, that's sort of remarkable to think about. I think eventually, if you keep taking cracks at that pinata, it's eventually just going to break for it.
Because Florida won the championship, 14 teams in the SEC get in. Thoughts that it might be one of the best single years in conference history in basketball. We know what the Big East has done, the ACC has done, the Big 12 is proud. It's been a while for the Big 10, but does this put them at the top as the best conference in basketball because they won it all, or is that the case anyway?
Yeah, I thought it was the case at least this year anyway. I think the championship certainly validates things for the conference and really the tournament performance overall with 2 in the Final Four and things like that. But look, I think these things change year to year. I do think, though, this is a clear sign of the league's comprehensive commitment to basketball. And if the SEC is going to be comprehensively committed to basketball, they're probably going to win a lot of championships.
The game's about to change, though, Kevin, isn't it? I know they had the settlement hearing. Nothing really came out of that. But what do you see? How do you see this changing? And with the cap, scholarship limitation, all of that. How do you see this changing the game itself?
Yeah, look, it's a completely different world. I think money has been a factor for a long time, certainly over the last couple of years. I think it will be a prerequisite to winning championships that you have strong financial resources to pay your players. I don't think it will be a prerequisite that you have the best or top 2 or 3 in the country to win a championship. Florida was a good NIL, maybe not great NIL. Houston had good NIL, maybe not great NIL. I think it was important to be able to have enough money to retain the guys you really want to keep in your program. I think that'll still be the case. But yeah, we'll see kind of league to league how things evolve. Right now, there's an edge for Big East programs to be able to revenue share in-house a little bit more than bigger programs in the SEC and the Big 12. But these rules have changed pretty much every year, and so to predict what's going to happen in 3 to 5, I mean, I'd be playing pretty blind on that one.
I know you have a flight coming up. Kevin Sweeney with us in San Antonio. Houston, last-second loss to Florida. Gators win their 3rd national title. There's a video of Kelvin Sampson in front of his bench as the last few seconds are winding down as the possession begins, and he just sat there, and it was kind of sad because he's sitting there expecting a team that had been so experienced, that had won clutch games, to make a play. And, of course, as we know what happened, and it was almost like he was helpless. Did you see that video? And really, in the end, how does this hurt and impact Kelvin Sampson? Doesn't take away from being a Hall of Fame coach, but just that close.
Oh, I mean, it was gutting. Honestly, what was harder for me was to go into that staff locker room afterwards and see his son, Kellen, just with the same kind of blank stare on his face. His daughter, Lauren, who's their director of operations, in the corner, sitting on the floor in tears. And then Quantis White, who was coaching his last game with Houston. He's off to go be the head coach at Louisiana. But, he obviously played for Kelvin at Oklahoma. That program, everyone in it, the staff players, they desperately wanted to bring Kelvin that championship. I think they probably feel the pain of it more even than Kelvin does.
Kevin, thank you very much. Safe travels. Thanks for your time. Kevin Sweeney was at the championship in the Final Four in San Antonio, and this is 365 Sports. Kevin was about to take a flight. I asked him to come on live, and he says, well, I'm getting ready to take a flight in 30 minutes if you want to call me, and I did. I appreciate his time from SI.com. Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak. We appreciate your time today on 365 Sports. Mike Craven, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. I reached out to you, Mike, last week about jumping on with us, and then you showed me your schedule. Today is the only off day you have, like for the next, from last week into this week and forever? Did you decompress, or are we getting in the middle of that?
You're mute, Mike. You're muted, Mike.
Yeah, let's see.
Sorry, I did decompress a little bit, but we have a newborn at home, so the road might be a little bit easier for me to sleep than even home is. So kind of a balance there during magazine season.
Mike, when you go to these spring tours, how much has changed about the way that you approach it in the new era of college football and roster building and the way you observe things and notice things? Because it is, like used to be, you kind of walk into a place kind of knowing maybe what your story was definitely going to be. Now you're probably in a lot of maybe, aren't you?
Well, luckily for us, the SIDs do a pretty solid job of updating those rosters early part of spring. But yeah, I mean, you do walk in not knowing if a senior's gone or if a senior's back. I mean, you used to, if a guy was a senior and he played most of the season, you assumed he was gone. Now, it's 50-50, and you kind of walk into these interviews and you're like, so-and-so, he's gone, right? Like, so yeah, it is crazy. And then with the transfer portal, and now also with early enrollees and just that being a pretty prominent thing, I'd say half the roster or more is typically turned over every single time we stop in for the spring. So it definitely is different.
So, Mike, how'd you kind of decide on your path and where you're going to go and, kind of the order? Or was there anything intentional about that, or is it just kind of throwing darts? Kind of explain all that to us.
Yeah, so I think the most I've improved in my career at Dave Campbell's is logistically, probably not even as a writer or anything. It's just like figuring this thing out. And so the first couple of years, it was a dartboard. You just kind of took the dates and, you'd be in Lubbock one day and then Houston. And I was like, I can't do that anymore. And so I kind of divided in half. I have the Waco up to DFW to do those three, and then Lubbock, and then back to Austin. I live in Austin, so I kind of make that triangle. And then the next week I do Houston, Texas State, Rice, A&M, and do that triangle and come back. So I try to make it to where I'm not scattered because this state's just so darn big.
All right, let's just pick a team. You've been you've been to SMU, TCU, Baylor, and Tech, right? Are you there, Mike? I think we lost him. We'll try to regroup. Yeah, he lost the audio. I'm not sure. So are you there? Okay. Yeah. You've been to SMU, TCU, Baylor, Texas Tech. Is that correct?
Yeah, and A&M yesterday.
And A&M. So let's start with SMU, coming off that first year in the ACC and obviously made a hell of a run. Your thoughts about where they are, Rhett Lashley, the year after, now that they're a part of the Power Four and entrenched?
Yeah, the defense has a lot of turnover. I mean, they lose their best defensive end in Elijah Robertson, a couple defensive tackles, both of their starting middle linebackers. And so it's just getting into the transfer portal and replacing those guys. And they've recruited more and more high school each year that Rhett Lashley's been there. So they have some young guys that they think are ready to step up. They're going to need to outscore some teams, though. Kevin Jennings is going through an offseason as actually the starting quarterback. Last year he got mostly the second team snaps behind Preston Stone. New wide receiver group. Jordan Hudson's probably the biggest name there that's back. New running backs. So they had definitely loaded up for that first year in the P4, put a lot of eggs in that basket to kind of get there and not get embarrassed, and it turned into the Cinderella season. And now they're going to have to do it with a mostly new crop of players.
What kind of gas do you think they're cooking with now, Mike? I mean, it's a totally different feel now that you made the college football playoff and you've had such a successful first year. I mean, there's no more talking about what ifs and if we get the chance. I mean, they went out and they took full advantage for the most part of their opportunities last year. Does it feel a little bit different around the hilltop in terms of just the place of SMU in the greater Texas football conversation?
Yeah, 100%. You know, they're kind of back. I mean, I was born in 1985. So to me, SMU in the glory days were kind of like a smoke dream by my uncles, just talking about this team that used to give out cars and money and all this kind of stuff. And I just never do it, right? Like, they were never good in my lifetime. And so, you know, after they made that run, you go back in there and you kind of get that feeling. The facilities have gotten improved. They have a whole new thing going on in their end zone complex. And so it is major football there. They're definitely back in, you know, the national spotlight. And, you know, it's one thing to kind of catch lightning in a bottle. You know, they didn't play Miami. They didn't play Clemson last year in the regular season. We'll see what happens this year because the schedule's much tougher. You know, Baylor at TCU, at Clemson, they get Miami at home. So they could be just as good as they were last year and go 8-4 and just had a harder road to get there.
You said you went to A&M yesterday. Mike Elko, year 2. He did a better job, I think, than most people thought he would. I mean, until the Texas game, they were in it for the conference title. What do you think is the next step for Marcel Reed and that offense? Because even though they lose a lot on defense, Mike Elko's kind of got that part figured out probably.
Yeah, it's the passing game, specifically the downfield passing game. I think they're going to run the ball tremendously. They have, I think, their top 7 offensive linemen back. Their 3 or 4 best running backs back. You know, Le'Veon Moss is back, Amari Daniels, Reuben Owens. You know, Marcel Reed himself obviously is a really good runner. So, you know, Colin Klein as the OC, I mean, I think they're going to run the ball as good, if not better, than everybody in the SEC. Just can they be balanced? Can they threaten a defense vertically? Because against SEC defense, you got to be able to do both. You're probably not going to win, you know, 10 games just being a running football team. They went to the transfer portal at wide receiver. They think Terry Bussey's going to take the next step. And so if they can get, you know, somewhat balanced and vertical in the passing game, I think they like their chances over there. And, you know, defensively, they replace a lot on the defensive line, but, you know, they feel like getting better on pass defense is the key to them taking the next step there.
Mike, what is man, they just seem like they've slipped far behind everybody. Everything that they're doing right now doesn't seem to be working. Now, Elko gives them a breather. Baseball, I know you're mainly working on football, but baseball is disappointing. A&M basketball is disappointing because they didn't get as far as you thought. Your thoughts about, is there a cloud hanging over that campus right now?
Yeah, the more I do this, the more I've learned that alignment is super important. It's not just about getting the right coach and getting the right players. It's having consistency and, you know, leadership at the athletic director position and at the president position. I think they've had 5 presidents and 4 athletic directors, like since 2018 or 19, something like that. Like, there's just been a ton of turnover at A&M. They haven't seemed to figure out any stability on the back end. And I think that's caused a lot of instability for their major sports. And, you know, Texas dealt with this after DeLoss Dodds, where, you know, they didn't have great leadership at the athletic director spot. And, you know, the 3 major sports, you know, dipped at a pretty big level. Chris Del Conte gets there, and all of a sudden those sports are getting better. That's probably not a coincidence. And so I think A&M's just a crisis of leadership, you know, behind the head coaches, and that's set them up for failure.
Meanwhile, out in Lubbock, there is a big-time hype train being built up right now. I wonder, could you feel it while you were out there? And there's reason, obviously, to be excited, Mike. And they're not shying away from the expectations. I mean, they know. They're outright flaunting the results so far, but they also know it's the results on the field. How do you feel about Texas Tech and just the wave of momentum they're riding right now?
Yeah, I think they're trying to take advantage of the market. And there's this little bit of a gray area between now and the rev share model where you can unload the clip in NIL, and Texas Tech's going for it. They saw what SMU did. They saw Arizona State win the Big 12 and, you know, almost upset Texas in the Peach Bowl. And they said, you know, why not us? Like, we can go build a roster to do that. They have, you know, an experienced quarterback. They have a pretty easy schedule, a manageable schedule, at least on paper. And so with the facility upgrades and going into year 4, I think they just decided, hey, we're going to go take advantage of this market, get into the transfer portal, and get good at the places that Tech normally isn't. And that's in the trenches. Like, they always have a pretty good 7-on-7 football team for most of my life. That's kind of been the book on Texas Tech. Like, they can throw the football around. They're going to score points, but like, they're not going to be physical in the run game. They're not going to stop the run and get after the quarterback. They added 3 potential starters on the offensive line and 4 potential starters on the defensive line, a couple in the secondary. Like, personnel wise, they're there. That puts pressure on Joey McGuire to go win. I don't think he's shying away from that. I think he understands what's in front of him.
What was it like to see the facilities? I don't know if that was your first time to see. I mean, those were obviously something that were pumped up a lot and widely shown over those last few months in person. Were they as glorious as they were in picture form?
Yeah, they're pretty nice. I was there for the Colorado game, and they were about half done, like the football coaching offices and stuff. So I'd seen that. But in terms of the new weight room and the player lounge and all that kind of stuff, I was joking with Texas State's former offensive coordinator, Mac Leftwich, who's now there as the offensive coordinator. I was like, a little different than San Marcos, huh, bro? Yeah. And so, they got like 0 gravity beds and a barber shop in there and all that kind of jazz. So, yeah, I mean, it's super nice. It's a football resort. And I don't think it's a coincidence. TCU's finishing up facilities. Texas is undergoing some stuff. Like, I don't think, Baylor, obviously, just with the Fudge Center and stuff. I don't think it's a coincidence that all these are kind of coming right before the rev share, because in the future, I don't know if the money will be there for those type of projects.
Well, there is a lot of reasons to be excited in Lubbock. Joey
those
was
coordinators
with us.
alone. I mean, those coordinator hires as well.
They did, because losing Kitley, obviously, he's really good at what he does. But Smith coming in from Houston, and who they have. There was early on in Joey's tenure, he was probably a little bit too much, like over his skis with what he was expecting, which is excitement. That's who he is. This seems more real. That like is backed up with like meat on the bones than it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the personnel's there to go win it. I really like their coordinators. To your point, Sheil Wood, defensive coordinator who was at Houston last year, made the Cougars so much better than they should have been. Like, they had no business being as good as they were defensively. They won a couple games in the Big 12. They beat TCU. They beat Kansas State. And a lot of that was his defense. So I think they're going to take a large step forward defensively. And what Leftwich does is pretty similar to what Kitley does. Leftwich is a disciple of Eric Morris. He was at Incarnate Word with Morris, and then obviously G.J. Kinney there, and then at Texas State. So he's going to run his version of the air raid, and that's the love language of West Texas football out there in Lubbock. So I think offensively they're going to be fine. If they can become a top 3 or 4 defense in the Big 12, I think they'll be in Arlington.
So you mentioned TCU's upgrades there. We just had a story about their roster is not really all that new. Only 8 transfers that they brought in. How confident does that make them now going to a year where they were 8-4 last year? Turnovers were a problem. They just kind of couldn't really separate themselves from the middle of the pack in the Big 12. Is this a year where they can take a big step?
Yeah, Sonny thinks this is their best roster that he's probably ever had anywhere. I mean, they're very talented. They're very deep. They've recruited really well, and they're doing it more organically. They feel going into year 4 that they're going to bet on recruitment and development. Where Texas Tech has kind of gone and made big splashes in the portal. I think TCU is trusting their evaluations and thinks behind the scenes they've homegrown a lot of really good football players. And, I think the most interesting part of modern football right now, even with the frustrations, is everybody's got their own idea on how to make this thing work. And we're going to see in real time kind of what strategies, float to the top. TCU's doing it more with high school recruiting. They like their quarterback a lot. Josh Hoover, they had to replace a lot at wide receiver. But, the Big 12 is so open for business that when you go to Baylor, you go to TCU, you go to Texas Tech, you walk out of it and thinking that all 3 of those could really compete for a Big 12 championship if certain things fall correctly.
How did your Big 12 preseason predictions shake out last year? Ours were awful, and it was, looking at Arizona State obviously was the biggest miss, I think, by everybody. But, Mike, I don't – like, in the SEC, you can say Georgia's going to be good to some extent. Texas and Alabama are going to be good to some extent. So it's kind of easier. I don't feel like there's really any way to ever truly know year in and year out in the Big 12 the way you can kind of know and group the top teams, quote-unquote, in other leagues.
Yeah, I always think Oklahoma State's like the perfect example of what the Big 12 is. You know, like when you think they're going to be good, they're bad. And when you think they're going to be bad, they're good. And there's always going to be a team that jumps from the bottom. It was Baylor in 21. It was TCU in 22. Oklahoma State in 23, and then Arizona State in 24. So there's going to be a team that we, chalk as a victory and everybody overlooks on a schedule that in November is going to be the hardest team on the schedule. And there's going to be a couple teams at the top that don't work out and end up being bad and are easy wins. Like who would have seen BYU come in last year? And so, yeah, that's what I love about the Big 12. I think it's the most entertaining and fun conference because it's not as top heavy as the other ones. I mean, even the ACC is very top heavy for the most part. And so I think that's the fun part. I think it's like it harkens back to a day of college football that I think a lot of us miss. And I'm excited about this season because I think the transfer portal and NIL has helped the Big 12 as much as anybody, even if that's counterintuitive to the big money stuff.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And the conference is about the time you think you know something, the next year coming back, you're right. That you gave the history of teams that have come basically from the gutter into playing and winning championships in the conference. Now, Baylor, Sawyer Robertson. It just seemed like you could just say his name, Mike, and that's enough to give everybody a big boost and a goose. They got more, and they got to get better in many ways, but what does just his presence after what we saw last year and what we read about him and what you saw mean to this Baylor football team?
I think a lot of times we look at culture as something that's from a bygone era, that in the transfer portal era and with NIL, culture takes a back burner. I'd argue it's more important than ever. And a guy like Sawyer Robinson and even like a Keaton Thomas on defense, who can just be the leaders of the team, who can be the translators between the coaching staff, who can be in the locker rooms, who can be at the parties, who can be at study hall, and kind of just be the connectors, can help the transfers come in, can help the true freshmen come in. Like we were talking about at the beginning, there's so much turnover on these rosters that you need those guys. You need those connectors. And, I just think Sawyer is an elite leader and obviously a really good quarterback. And if you combine those two things in college football, like you're going to have a chance to be a good football team. And I like the pieces around them. I'm on record. I mean, I think Baylor is going to be like the team. Like there's always a team in Texas that kind of surprises and makes a real run. Like I think Baylor's going to be that team. I really like the Bears this year.
You go to Texas later, but obviously everything's set up for them. They lose a lot of players that are going to be playing in the NFL next, but they'll reload. They got some key transfers. What are your thoughts about, without being there yet, but just watching them as they've added during the offseason?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Clemson gets all of this, hate for not really using the transfer portal, and Texas has obviously used the transfer portal a lot, but you look at like their expected 2 deep going into this year, and there's not many transfers on it. A couple at defensive tackle, but they've recruited really well behind the scenes, and I think we're going to start to see a lot of those young guys. And with the extra COVID year, there was like this stockpile of talent that just hung around in college football for a long time, and it's finally graduated in a large portion. And, I think the Longhorns are one of those teams where, a new crop of players are going to emerge, and I think that's fun, right? I mean, we're in college football, you like the turnover and the next thing and who's the sophomore that's finally going to emerge. And that's been blockaded a little bit the last couple of years. And, I think the Longhorns are fresh. I mean, they lost a lot of wide receiver. They lost their tight end. Obviously, the quarterback. They're going to be really good running the football. But I trust that recruiting. I think they're going to be pretty good. The lines of scrimmage should be solid. And I'd imagine they're a 9-3, 10-2 type playoff team.
The non-FBS schools like Texas State, UTSA, with great coaches and guys that know each other. Hell, G.J. Kenny played for Jeff Traylor in high school. Where they are in the pecking order and what are their expectations, Mike?
That's a great question. I think if you ask them, maybe they'd have a different answer than if you ask me. I think coaches tend to be eternal optimists, and like they don't look at it as being in this huge deficit and they're playing a different sport than these other guys. Like, they'll say, give me a football, line me up, and we can go beat those guys even if they have a bigger budget. But there's players on teams at the P4 level that are making more in NIL than whole teams at the G5 level, right? Like when UTEP goes and plays at Texas in non-conference this year, Arch Manning's making more than the whole UTEP football team. And by football team, I also mean the coaches, right? Like Texas is going to have 10 to 15 players that are making more than the head coach at UTEP, right? Like the budgets are so far out of whack and going to grow even further out of whack with rev share that I would argue that they're not really playing the same sport. And I think we're headed towards a split where there's different playoffs and different champions. And, maybe there's a promotion and getting relegated like in soccer across the seas. So I think the gap is only getting wider. Like I've said this when I started doing research for the magazine, there's not a single all-conference player from the G5 level in the state that's returning to their football team. They either transferred or they graduated. And so I'd imagine that's true across the nation. And I just think the gulf is getting bigger and bigger, and the job is harder and harder. And it's why you see some head coaches becoming coordinators at the P4 level, because the old route was be a P4 coordinator, get the G5 head coaching job, have success there, go become a big time head coach. Well, now it's so hard to be successful at the G5 level consistently because your roster is a one-year proposition. That how do you build enough momentum unless you're at Boise State or Memphis or Tulane to go get that next job? And so I think we're going to see the coaching talent dip at that level, just like we're seeing the player talent dip at that level. The
whole roster and coaching staff combined making less than the FBS schools in certain cases. Well, and it's not going to change. As you said, the gap gets larger and larger. North Texas with Eric Morris, who's done a nice job, got work to do. Is another one of those schools that kind of playing uphill against the stream in what you expect from them.
Yeah, I think North Texas has a chance to make a real run at the AAC. Like Eric Morris's offense are always going to score points. He's got to replace his leading passer, leading rusher, and leading receiver for the I guess third straight year because of the transfer portal. But they've been a top 10 total offense both years he's been there. I mean, I just trust the fact that Mean Green are going to score points. Their issue has been defensively. Like they have been atrocious defensively since he's got there. Skylar Cassidy is about as well respected of a young defensive coordinator as you can find. I mean, he walked into Sam Houston last year, and I think they went from like a scoring defense in the 70s to a scoring defense in the 40s. Like, they really made a jump in year one and then ended up winning 10 games. They're another team that the schedule works out really well for them. They don't play Memphis. They don't play Tulane. They get UTSA at home. So if that defense can just be average and they keep scoring points the way that they do, I mean, they might win 9 or 10 games and be one of the best G5s, not the best G5s in the state.
You have been to these places, spent a lot of time with them. I saw what you mentioned about Morris and defensive coordinator. You mentioned Cassidy that went position by position. If I mention one of the schools you've been to, would it be, not trying to catch you off guard, but a player that you think is the most intriguing story or one that may be under the radar?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them at all these places, I guess. I mean, there's position units that kind of stand out to me for sure. Yeah, I don't know. You stop at all these places so much so quickly, you kind of just like get over flooded with information. But I think just of the teams we've talked about, SMU's defense is probably the one that sticks out to me the most, and just kind of who emerges over there.
Mike, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Continued luck. By the way, it's at Craven Mike, Craven Mike. He has got synopsis, analysis, etc., summaries of the places he's been and of the schools we've talked about and still met. Where you go tomorrow?
I go to Texas State tomorrow, then UTSA, then Houston, then Rice over the rest of the week, and then I'm back home.
All right, buddy. Thank you, man. Good stuff. Mike Craven, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, joins us on 365 Sport. Appreciate his time. Is that fair to say that when you hear, when I think of SMU, I think of, I don't know if I think of Rhett Lashley or Jennings.
I think
of Rhett Lashley.
I think of Rhett Lashley, yeah.
Texas Tech.
Joey.
Baylor. Sawyer
right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say Aranda first, but I don't know. Sawyer might actually be kind of out maneuvering him now in terms of the spotlight, especially since one of them doesn't want the spotlight. So I think he's probably like shoving Sawyer into it.
Part of me thinks that if he could like coach in a booth, Like, not a booth like up in the booth, like on the sideline, just a booth with,
Yeah, I could relate to that, where nobody's looking at him or, I totally get that. But, no, I think he would love that. Unfortunately, that's not part of the job. But, I feel like Sawyer's probably become a high-profile enough guy that he would be that guy. But, it's still definitely Joey for Tech. So who else do you have there?
We said Tech, TCU.
Sonny.
Okay.
I think it's Sonny, but Josh Hoover's a really good player.
Yeah.
And I think by the end of the year, we might be talking about Josh Hoover. He's just got to be careful, and it's not always his fault. Quarterbacks get the interception tagged onto their record if it's a deflection, and that's not always, on them necessarily. But he did have some pretty crucial turnovers that bit them at times, and yet they still, win 8-4 in the regular season and win a bowl game. So, I think Josh Hoover is definitely a guy who could be, if TCU's as good as they think they are, he could be in the running for, player of the year at the end of the year.
In the conference?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Offensive player of the year, absolutely. If they're as good, if they were going to be better than 8-4 last year, that means they're winning 9-10 games.
Yeah.
They're going to win 9-10 games in large part because of him. So, I think he's definitely one of those, maybe, I don't know if he would be considered a dark horse. He's not to me, but to maybe people who don't follow the Big 12
Well, there's
closely,
so many quarterbacks who are coming back. He could get buried.
He's behind
in that.
Levitt, and he's probably behind Robertson for a lot of people. And
the guy from Cincinnati's pretty good, too. Robertson, you mentioned him.
Brandon Sorsby from Texas,
A&M.
Good question. I think the silence speaks to the whole issue.
Yeah, maybe it does. They don't.
I guess Elko. I don't know.
Right now, I think of Marcel Reed because of that's the big question about them. But it's I know they're going to be good. The problem is that they don't just want to be good. They want to be great. Right. I don't know if they can be great.
When have they ever been great?
Exactly.
I know they've knocked on the door, but they just need to be good.
They've never been great. No, you say they just need to be good. No, the time for good for them is over.
No, it's been that way for a long time. RC had some teams. Cheryl had some teams. Yeah, Manziel and 12.
They were the hottest team in the country.
Yeah,
they were the most
story
talked about
of college football.
Team and player in the entire country there for about 2 years. And actually, one year where it really went crazy on the field, right? The highs.
10-2, yeah.
Yeah, that was the big year.
And beat the crap out of Oklahoma in the bowl game.
They beat Alabama, and that was a big deal.
He won the Heisman.
That was his Heisman moment, yeah. So, but I'm sure some people think of Marcel Reed, but he's still. I got to see more of him to think of him when I think of A&M, just like that. You know what I mean? But if he plays a handful of games at the beginning of the year, maybe I just flip that switch and I'm like, yeah, Marcel Reed, A&M. But right now, I don't know. I don't. If you're talking about the face of the franchise, right? That's your question. I don't think he's. I don't think he's.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem with him is I don't really. The coach doesn't jump out, and the quarterback's not quite there yet to be the face of the franchise, to me at least. So maybe it's just some defensive player we're not thinking of. Torian York. There you go. That's who it is.
You know what, Garrett? There's a reason you're there. There's a reason.
I did. I thought about it. Yeah, but he's.
I'm glad I texted that to you to tell me to say that on the air. Yeah.
No,
making Garrett look good.
But Torian York is something A&M has. They had Edgerrin Cooper a couple years ago, and he was really good. But A&M's identity, I feel, has always been through running backs and linebackers.
Well, the problem with running back is that they can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
You had Reuben Owens go down early. Obviously, later on,
Le'Veon Moss went down.
They got to a point where and Marcel Reed, you don't want him running too much.'s dangerous to run, but man, you can't.
Torian York is definitely the answer, and I don't even think it's close because he's also a good ag, and he's he's the kind of dude that I think his work ethic and all of that just lines up with A&M perfectly. And so Torian, I think we fell into the trap of it's a head coach or it's a quarterback or something.
Well,
but
that's usually
that's usually who it is. But in the case of A&M, I wasn't all in on Marcel Reed, but I'm 100%. Yeah, it's Torian York for sure.
Speaking of A&M, they had the Manziel year, and then they had the COVID year. They were 9-1, and they might have been right there on the edge of playing for a champion, in the championship playoff, whatever it was at that time.
I have no memory of their 9-1 COVID year.
Well, here,
I have no memory of a lot of the COVID year.
That's like a year that's a blur in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But the one loss, they got destroyed by Alabama. 52-24, but they beat Florida 41-38. They didn't play Tennessee and Ole Miss, postponed, canceled against Ole Miss again when they tried to reset it. Beat Auburn, beat LSU, beat Tennessee the second time when it was rescheduled, and then beat North Carolina. They were good. It was Jimbo. Maybe that was the chance for him, and of course it fell apart.
He didn't build off of that.
Nope.
And also, I think, they're 9-1. They were probably luckier than most with outbreaks that year. You also remember that year, there were probably 3 or 4 teams they played on the schedule that were like barely holding on walking into there.
They were 5th ranked when they beat North Carolina.
Yeah, I'm not trying
how many was like we had one guy up before the threshold of COVID cancellation.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of
so like they got lucky that they got all 10 of those games in, but how many of those games were, against full rosters and all that. So that, I'm not trying to take away like anybody who played that year and made it through that year is a champion and a hero and all that. But, when you come down to it, like that can also give you a little bit of false hope because you're like, hey, we were 9-1. Like, yeah, but you beat 3 teams in a row that had 5 offensive linemen and had one gotten hurt. They were going to have to pull a defensive lineman over and be like, hey, remember when you were a sophomore in high school? Do that. Yeah. That's just how it was going to be.
Mike will be visiting, as he mentioned. He still has Texas. That's like next week. You'll be at Texas State, Rice, UTSA, and I believe he said Houston?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and Houston with Wigman as their quarterback. So we'll kind of check back with him, with Mike sometime in about a week or so. All right, that was pretty fun. Isn't that nice that we were just talking football? And it was good to be able to do that. It was really good to do that. Craig's Off the Radar is around the corner. Here's a note from Chris Del Conte. This is not anything he's said like in the last day or two, but when he had his town hall meeting, which he does, and it's pretty good. I have not watched it. I have not listened to it. I've seen a couple of audio clips. But when we look at the future of college football, and just think about this, but in July of 2021, when the announcement came, the story broke that Texas and Oklahoma were headed to the SEC. There was this, what in the hell are they doing? We knew why financially, but you wondered about the success. But what he said, and how many athletic departments other than maybe 5, if that many, can say this? This is the University of Texas. We're good at everything. We're going to fully fund every single one of our sports at the highest division. This is me not trying to go, what an arrogant comment. It's not. He's right. Across the board, and they are going to have so many more scholarships. Remember what we had with Byrne, the AD, at Alabama, when he says anyone that thinks we're flush with money, even though they are, it's not like we have the money like Alabama, Ohio State, and others.
They don't have Texas flush or A&M flushed. They don't. I mean, Alabama, that's a misconception because, they definitely don't have that kind of scratch.
And they're also, they're going to raise ticket prices for football, $80 per season ticket.
That's a good
They
pop.
can do that.
Yeah.
That's
a bunch of money.
They'll do that because the people paying that are probably already paying $500 for the ticket. But, still, that $80 per ticket, that's a big.
That's huge. And, look, I'll tell you this. One of the things I like about this? This is transparency. I like this. This isn't like, I don't know. We got to worry about this. Everybody knows you have all this money. All you do is brag about it. So go ahead and say, we're going to be fully funded. Throw down the gauntlet and see who can catch you.
Yeah, I think he's the right guy at the right place at the right time for them to flex their full superpowers because there's nothing prohibiting them from being able to flaunt all of the goods that they have, and that's fortunate for them. But not everybody and most everybody cannot live in that same neighborhood. So really, I think by the end of his tenure, and we've already seen great successes, but if they don't have multiple national titles in all sorts of sports, especially the big sports, then I would consider that a massive failure because there's really no excuse for Texas to not be like the crown jewel of college sports with the rules now the way that they are.
Don't
Everything for them is aligned across the board.
Don't you think it's funny that 2 ADs ago was Steve Patterson, who was trying to figure out how to take money away from sports like tennis and golf and things that like billionaire donors who played tennis had donated, and he was going to be like, hey, do you really want a new tennis facility, or can we get new bathrooms for the football team that, have all this? Like, no, I want the new tennis facility. That's what I want. And he was trying to get rid of sports. And then you have a guy that's like, you know what? We're adding rugby and ice dancing and curling. We don't care. Put it there. We're going to put money behind it, and everybody's going to have a scholarship. The University of Texas is here to play. I like it.
They're adding, I believe the number was, and correct me if I'm wrong, around 200 new scholarships because they can. And they are going to do that because they're also raising more money through ticket sales and the base that they have. And right now, if you're a donor, an alum, and yeah, you want a football, think about what they're doing. They just changed their men's basketball coach, but I thought that was a pretty cool quote from him. Not by any means arrogant, absolutely what they can do, and right now that's what they're doing. So, hey, Garrett, who is that? Andrew, who put up the all the social media stuff in the chat room?
Yes.
We have Andrew Valade, who is now, we've told you this about maybe 4 or 5 days ago, shows ago. We have, of course, the YouTube. That's where we are, 365 Sports. Twitter at 365 Sports YT. But also available, if in fact you're on Instagram, you could watch us, although we got to get some new followers. And TikTok. Are they up and running now? Or is there a little bit of
who knows?
Give and take on that?
Look, we're there. Feel how you want to feel about it. I don't know. We're there.
Okay, well, I mean, we're moving into other particular platforms. And so that's available for those of you, whether you do anything other than Twitter or whatever. That we appreciate Andrew for doing what he does. Appreciate that. All right, don't forget tonight at 10:30, 365 Sports tonight on the local CW. Emery Winter's already working on that. Craig Smoak, off the radar. That's next. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace. Let me find out if they have anything. Yes, they do. 30-pound bags, big bags of live crawfish available. The price has dropped to $3.70 a pound. You can call now. Call all the way up until noon on Thursday. Make your order. How many bags of live crawfish, of 30-pound bags of live crawfish you want. Pre-order by Thursday at noon. Pick up anytime after, might get about 4 o'clock on Friday or when they're open on Saturday. $3.70 a pound. That baby, that has dropped in a hurry for crawfish boil. I saw a commercial the other day watching a game. Might have been HEB. They're a sponsor of our Academic All-Stars, and they had all that crawfish, and they have all that at Waco Custom Marketplace, plus the potatoes, the sausage, the shrimp, the seasoning, and so much more. By the way, also there's steaks, T-bone, porterhouse, available right now at a price $12.50 and $3.25 a pound. Beef fajita meat, 2.5-pound bag is $17.50. 2.5 pounds of chicken fajita meat at $11.99, and 10% off all Boar's Head deli meat. Waco Custom Marketplace, cold beer, cold wine, bakery, and a butcher shop and more. 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund. Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
Welcome into Off the Radar on this Tuesday. Got a grab bag of stories to look at, starting off with some television ratings in light of last night and also Sunday's women's final, as there was pretty good news for the TV execs and, quite frankly, for fans of a program like Houston as well, who can win, but then you wonder, winning only goes so far. How attractive of a brand are you also, right? What kind of an audience are you pulling in? Well, that was a pretty dramatic game last night, so you figured that Florida-Houston might be able to pop a pretty good rating, especially in light of the very successful Final Four where you had your 4 top seeds, and both games in the semifinals brought in big-time audiences. Well, the national championship game didn't disappoint. 18.1 million viewers, the average mark on CBS, making it the largest men's college basketball game audience since the 2019 title game between Virginia and Texas Tech, which saw 19.4 million people tune in for Cavaliers and Red Raiders. So, that was a nice night there for Houston and Florida in terms of a competitive game. But it was also a nice night, as I mentioned, for the TV broadcast as well. The previous high, before going back all the way to 2019, so when you look at that 5-year period, the most watched game before last night and before you get to 2019 was the 2022 national semifinal between Duke and North Carolina, which brought in close to 18 million, just under 18 million viewers. So, 18.1 the average last night for that game, and obviously wish the outcome would have been a little bit different in this part of the country at least, but at one point they did mark 21.1 million viewers, which was a very nice mark, and it was a big uptake from the past couple national championship games. So, good numbers for the national championship game. That doesn't mean a whole lot in the long run, but it can, especially when you're Brett Yormark and you're printing out like audience ratings and your wins, and hey, here's Houston competing, but not only did they compete on the court, but off the court they're pulling in big numbers, are part of a broadcast. So that can't hurt you. It can only help you. It may not mean nothing in the long run, but it certainly doesn't hurt. So a big number for the game last night.
Well, and until we got into this conference realignment path and momentum, I never thought about who was playing in the game. I always just thought about how important the game was, and I watched it or not, or got the numbers.
And I was always interested just to see what the rating, it's like when the Super Bowl rating comes out, you're just like, I wonder how many people are watching, and that's kind of where my head always was prior to what you're talking about, where it became sort of a like the Big 12's average dipped because this game didn't pull in one. Like that to me is when it gets. For me, I don't have an appetite much for that, I think is what you're saying. But just in general, it's a fun thing to look at, which is what this exercise is, this segment I've always maintained. That's what all this always is. It's fun to look in and see what the numbers are.
It's a championship in a big boy sport, and it was a hell of a game. It was sloppy at times because of the styles of the two, but it was a great game, drama down to the last second of the game. Great time to have it, although you're East Coast, that was a late start. Good. I'm glad I had good numbers.
Thanks to Sports Media Watch, they break it down even better. Up 22% from UConn Purdue, up 23% from the national title game 2 years ago, UConn San Diego State. So both those games had just under 15 million, so a big uptick over the last couple of years. And as I mentioned, you had the two very well-viewed semifinal games as well. So as a whole, the men's Final Four averaged about 16.4 million viewers, which is up 20+% from a year ago, and the highest number in the last 7 years, or close to 8 years now. So I don't know what you attribute all that to. I guess maybe just all the top teams being available, which is what we talked about at the beginning of the bracket being put together, and then the way it all went sort of chalk. If you'll remember a couple weeks ago when we were talking, I was like, well, yeah, it's disappointing there's no Cinderella, but I bet the TV networks are slobbering all over themselves because the big brands and the big seeds are all still alive, and if they keep winning, it's going to lead to big brands, big seeds, and sure enough, that's exactly what it ended up being in the Final Four. So I think there's smiles on TV networks' faces, not that we necessarily are rooting for that by any means, but it is something of note off the radar at least. Meanwhile, for the women's side, a big drop-off. But it was going to be a big drop-off when you didn't have Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and whoever else you want to attribute the popularity of last year's game to. But UConn beating South Carolina on Sunday averaged 8.5 million viewers across ABC and ESPN, trailed only the past couple of years as the most-watched women's college basketball game of the Nielsen era, which goes back to 1988. So it actually did really, really well. It just pales in comparison to the past couple of years. A drop of 55% from last year's 18.9 million that watched South Carolina and Iowa, and just a drop of 14% from LSU, Iowa 2 years ago. So Caitlin Clark effect is very real, but think about that. 14% drop from 2 years ago, but a 55% drop. 18.9 million people watched that game last year. Yeah. That is absolutely insane.
Well, and also, you mentioned the Caitlin Clark Angel Reese was not in the Final Four last year. LSU got beat, remember?
Yeah, you're right,
by Iowa to get to the Final
I was saying
Four. So it was, but I understand the momentum.
The popularity, too.
But she wasn't, LSU didn't make it to the Final Four, so that even adds more cream to what the popularity or interest in Caitlin Clark was like.
Well, yeah, South Carolina instead took the place of LSU and Mulkey and Reese and all those folks, and they were enough of a counterpart and a juggernaut in their own right that just was the perfect storm of, can you put the best combination of things together to make the biggest, most-watched women's game of all time? It was Caitlin Clark and her Iowa team, and it was South Carolina and Dawn Staley and her team. And so a massive drop, and yet still one of the better-watched broadcasts in the history of women's sports since they started recording this in the late 80s. So thought that was worth mentioning. A nice number, 8.5. But, yeah, last year's, I don't see a scenario where that's ever topped. I mean, you'd have to have another –
well, I mean, she's a once-in-a-lifetime.
Yeah,
They're once-in-a-lifetime. Like, and Caitlin Clark is super popular. She's very popular.
Insanely popular.
And part of it is because it's not only that there's been other basketball players that are as talented. Like, Brittany Griner is one of the best to ever play it. Rebecca Lobo, Cheryl Scoops, all talented in their own way. It's the style in which Caitlin Clark plays and that she bombs three-pointers all the time that makes her more fun to watch for a lot of people than most.
Yeah, and I was even telling y'all during the break, I came across a random YouTube account. It's not like – I don't even think it's a full sports account, but they had over 1 million viewers, and I was just curious. I was like, I wonder how they got their audience, because it seemed like it was a bit of a mixed bag when I looked at just sort of their recents or whatever. And – they had over 1 million followers, and I went and looked deep, and all the top videos, every single one of them, all of them, 80, 90, 100,000, were all Caitlin Clark based. And it was one of those that's kind of almost tabloidy, it's kind of become around her. I think there's probably a lot of channels like that, but point being, her popularity is insane. Whether it's the people rooting for her or the people rooting against her, they both add to the audience. And so, yeah, we're probably not going to see any kind of flash in the ratings that triggers such a monumental spike like that we saw last year, the last couple years.
When you have athletes or teams that people love to hate.
Oh, yeah.
Love and or hate, or love to watch lose. You have that, and you had that factor. And why, when there was a rise, and why women's basketball is going to get a better contract, and they're going to have units and all that they're doing now. But it was still one of those things where TV executives had to go, okay, the game is becoming more popular, but it also just had its supernova.
Yeah.
And how do we kind of position that into it too?
The good news is you still have South Carolina and Dawn Staley, and you still have some characters, but and that was a good number. It just wasn't the last couple of years. Meanwhile, a lot of NBA draft declarations are going on, and one of those out of the Big 12 to talk about here is the freshman from BYU, Yegor Damin. He has announced that he is going pro, declaring for the NBA. I saw he was on, I believe it was BYU TV. They had a press conference, and then he joined the crew on set and discussed his decision. And it's clear it was a tough decision, that he really loved his time in Provo. And, did the whole song and dance. He'll be around and things like that, I'm sure. But I don't think this is quite a shocker. Big-time prospect. And they even mentioned, A.J. DeBonce's coming in. Was there any, man, I should stick around one more year and just see? But while there might have been, he's decided that he's done all he needs to do in college. He's going to go jump into the NBA. So that decision is official. Averaged a little less than 11 points, 4 boards, 5.5 assists. Over the course of his freshman, his one-and-done season there. And obviously BYU wrapping it up against Alabama in the Sweet 16 round where he had 15 points, 2 rebounds, 7 assists, and a couple of other statistics. But a really good player, and I'm very intrigued by Kevin Young. When you talk about, him going into the draft and then DeBonce, I don't think anybody thinks he's going to be more than probably a one-and-done type of guy, right? So you got this ex-NBA guy who's clearly already having some success, gets him into the Sweet 16. I'm very intrigued by, what he can build up there and what he can do with all those resources.
First of all, you mentioned BYU TV. Those guys are amazing.
They do a great job. Yeah.
We saw them at Big 12 middays in Vegas. They got a great setup, and that's fantastic. But there was a little bit of there was frustration because he was going to announce that today, and yet it was leaked last night. That he
That's
was, he's going to, turn
you can't
pros.
tell anybody anything.
No.
You maybe tell your mom or your dad or whoever you're closest to, but beyond that, people want social media clout. I wouldn't trust anybody with the big decision and not leaking it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. That's why when you it's refreshing when you have a story that nobody knew about, and you are the one that was able, not me or whoever, but you were able to be the one that released it without, hey, by the way, everyone knew about it the day or even 2 or 3 hours before.
Did y'all watch much of him this year or get much of a taste of his game?
I'm going to be honest with you. I saw him. I remember him, but he wasn't the guy that I remember the most on that team. They were really good, as you know. They could shoot it, man. They could shoot it and had a heck of a run.
So Yegor Damin heading to the NBA draft. Meanwhile, some other declarations, and one that came down, I guess this was about an hour ago. Texas freshman Trey Johnson announced on NBA Today over on ESPN that he is declaring for the NBA draft. He's projected as a top 5 pick in one of the latest mocks that ESPN had released. He called the season a roller coaster ride, but a great experience aside from the wins and losses. Played the best teams in the country and, loved his time at Texas, so on and so forth. He was the SEC Freshman of the Year, All-SEC second team, averaged nearly 20 a game, along with a little over 3 boards and close to 3 assists per game. Helped Texas make the tournament. Obviously, they had a very short stay, and that was all she wrote for Trey Johnson in Austin. I don't think this is a surprise. He was always kind of pegged as one of those types of talents, so he is going to be joining the big fella from BYU and heading off to the pros.
He is fantastic. There was a time where VJ Edgecombe and also Trey Johnson and some of the guys that were the one-and-done type players, where I thought VJ was having a better year. But near the end, Trey Johnson took over some games. And both of them are going to be in the most likely top 5. So when you are in that position, I even know with the NIL the way it is, if you're a top 5 in the NBA, I don't know how you turn down that opportunity. Plus, he proved himself the 1 year he was at Texas. He's a dynamic player.
Yeah, he's definitely a top 5 type guy. I think, on the flip side, Deming is more of he's a first rounder, but he's a later in the first round type of guy. He's not a straight fire 5 top pick lottery guy like Trey Johnson is, but he'll be a first rounder most likely.
Walter Clayton going to play in the NBA?
I think so. I mean,
he
can shoot.
Yeah, he can also play defense. But
he can score. They'll try to find a spot for him. So yeah, I think so. I think. And look, when you got a guy like Trey Johnson, you knew he was going to be a one and done.
Yeah.
You knew VJ. If VJ Edgecombe woke up tomorrow morning, he's like, man, the NBA is a really scary place. I'm going to stay here.
Yeah.
It would be ridiculous. It's not going to happen. So
Scott Drew would be like, dude, you got to go to the NBA.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you back, but you got to go play in the NBA while you can.
People be calling Scott, do you have this kid in a room? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. Meanwhile, so there's a couple of draft declarations, and there will be more of those as the days go on, but a couple of significant names there. Meanwhile, on the women's side, Notre Dame guard Olivia Miles has committed to TCU out of the transfer portal. That was just a tidbit I came across, and noteworthy because TCU was the best team in the Big 12 this past season. They were easily the best team in the Big 12. So she was thought to be going to the WNBA draft, and instead is going to be hitting the portal and heading to Fort Worth. So there seems to be a big pickup for the Horned Frogs. And then meanwhile, and I'm not even doing this to really screw with Paul by any means, but I did bring it up a week ago that the top scorer in the country, Tanaya Latson from Florida State, I brought up to Paul that she was entering the transfer portal, and she has already made her decision. And the rich get richer because she's going to go play for Dawn Staley in South Carolina. Yeah. That is now official. Tanaya Latson, leading scorer in D1 basketball, is going to go play for the Gamecocks and will reunite, according to the article I read, with her high school teammate Raven Johnson.
I don't blame her for going to play for the second best team in the country this year, and a coach that's well established.
Yeah.
Big fan of Brooke Wyckoff. As the coach at FSU, she's done a good job.
Look at you dropping names.
Well, I actually went to college with her, so I've known her since college. But yeah, I will say this. In the last week or two, watching Florida make their run, it has become evident to me that Florida State wants to basketball's their hobby and not their job. And I would like it to be I hear Chris Del Conte. I understand that the financial things are way different at FSU than they are at Texas, but that's where I would like Florida State to be, to where we're going to be good in basketball, we're going to be good in everything. But Texas has always tried in basketball. Florida's always tried in basketball. Schools like that always have, to varying levels of success. FSU never really has. It's always been basketball's there. And friggin' Bob Cousy went there. You think they'd have some respect for, the sport that, a team that spit out one of the great players of all time. But no. They just don't care as much. And so when I look at, if they're not going to care about men's basketball as much, well, they're certainly not going to care about women's basketball as much, which I think is unfortunate for everybody.
Yeah, it is. And speaking of those Gators, I saw this from our old buddy Jim Williams, who we haven't talked to in quite a while. I hadn't seen this stat anywhere else, but he put out there that with their third basketball national championship last night, what would that make it? 06, 07, and then 2025, and the three football national titles in 96, 06, and 08. According to him, Florida now the only school to claim three NCAA D1 titles in both football and basketball. The first to accomplish that feat.
Well, when you're a powerhouse, and you're good across the board, and you have a beautiful, just a gorgeous campus.
And you know what's crazy about that, though? Seriously, all six of those have come since '96.
Yeah,
and five of the total have come since 2005.
Yeah,
or 2006.
How many have they won in baseball?
One.
Okay.
One, just a couple years ago.
That's what will set you over the edge.
That is really the one.
Is that Langford for the Rangers? Didn't he play at Florida?
Yeah. Him and Jack Caglione. So, but the thing, I told Garrett this earlier, the thing that drives me is football, I hate losing to them, but we're all trying in football in the state of Florida. So it doesn't really bother me. Baseball, it only bothers me that they have one and we don't, because otherwise our histories are very similar.
Right.
Basketball bothers me because of what he just said, is they're trying and we're just we like it. It's it holds our time, but I do think that And basketball is a little bit like more, they cared about it a little bit more before they went in the ACC. It's like when they got in the league with Duke and UNC, they're like, this is hard.
Even more reason to care.
That's exactly. But,
Yeah.
but
Go-
it was
go
like the
play with
reaction
them.
was like, oh, this is hard, man. Dean Smith and Coach K, you guys are crazy, man. We're not doing this.
Yeah, and I hadn't really thought about that, but I mean, to have, and I'm not trying to continue to pile on, but
go ahead.
for all that to happen, or 5 of the 6 championships and the 2 biggest sports to happen since 06, so they've all happened in the last 20 years. That's remarkable, man.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about taking a program from a certain place and putting it like up here. Like, you do that by winning 3 basketball titles and 2 football titles, and I mean, not to mention the greatness that is Tim Tebow, and just, I mean, we could get into all of it, but we won't do that for Paul's sake, because I think we've already done enough.
Here's the deal.
But
Football has at least been mediocre enough since Tebow
Yeah.
left for me not to, like, this morning, not to
triggered.
send,
Yeah.
last night to send me, like, walking through the streets aimlessly
Yes.
as to, like, how can this happen in a just world?
Yeah.
Now
But-
Florida has black Jesus.
Yeah, DJ Lagway?
I hope so, at
Yeah, I
least.
hope so, yeah. So
some people well, never mind.
yeah, but
Let's
no, I
finish
mean,
the
we'll see.
segment.
We'll see. But,
Yeah.
like, I think, and look, credit to them because they've allotted their resources in an appropriate way.
Yeah. All right, a couple notes to close it out
Can I
here.
have one more thing about Florida? I love the fact you wore their school colors today.
I was wondering when you bring that up. You're the second
okay.
person too. So
Go ahead,
yeah.
Craig.
All right. Meanwhile, just a baseball note and then one final thing to round out. Baseball note, very brief. Josh Young, activated by the Texas Rangers. You're shaking your head. You don't believe in Josh Young's health. I don't really believe in it at this point either, but the former Texas Tech Red Raider great, member of that World Series team a couple years back. He has been, since that World Series, basically, it feels like on and off the injured list. But he has been activated from neck spasms, so he is back, according to the Rangers, as of a couple of hours ago.
Okay.
So
That is something that
we'll see.
Honestly, when like the high ankle sprain is a lot worse than a broken ankle or something like that. The spasms, I've had them. Not at a professional athlete, but the spasms can absolutely shut you down. That's what I had. And I'm telling you, it's miserable. But he seems to like trip over.
It's always
like
something with him. Yeah. It's
And
always something with him. And finally, I don't really know where to dive in. I'm just going to throw it out there, and y'all can react accordingly. But it is Masters Week, and the
Damn right
pairings
it is.
were released for the first 2 rounds. And so we do have those. I don't know if you care because there's so many pairings. But
What do
you
you
have
mean?
like the pairings were released?
Oh, I mean, let's go. This is great.
Well, I'm saying,
Yeah.
do you want to throw okay, well, there's some of the names right there. I was going to say if you want to throw a name, but thank you, Garrett. That's perfect. There are some of the tee times and the groupings for the Masters coming up later on this week. So the most wonderful time of year, I know, for a lot of people, the greatest sports trip, according to a lot of people, that you could ever take. I know you've taken it a couple times, so the floor is yours, and yours as well, Paul. I know you're a big golf fan.
We'll have Rob Bolton tomorrow at 5:20 or so, 5:25. We'll make our Masters picks. Emery, I don't know if he's still eligible or not, or if Andrew likes golf.
Do we have Corey Coleman at that same time?
No, we moved him up.
Oh, we moved him up.
we,
Okay, good.
we
Thank
moved
you.
everybody back a segment, so we'll have Corey at 5. So Scheffler's won it twice. And that's Ballesteros. He's not Ballesteros. He's like, they left the OS. Of course, he's passed away. Spieth has won it. The next group, Koepka's won it. Scott's won it twice.
Has Koepka won the Masters? I don't think he's won the Masters.
He
has?
absolutely has.
Yeah. That's my guy, too.
Are you questioning me a golf nugget from me?
Yeah, he has. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah. Scott twice. McIlroy has never won it. This is the one he needs to complete the career Grand Slam on the 4 majors. Matsuyama's won it. Boy, DeChambeau, this course is built for him, and they were showing him on the range the other day. He's launching these drivers. And then, of course, John Rahm has won it. So there are all the guys. There's a bunch of former players. Bernard Longer, last year he's going to play. He just basically said the extra 300 or 400 yards they've added to the course are too much for him. He wants to be able to compete, and he doesn't feel like he can do that anymore.
Oh, so they've un-Tiger-proofed it 20 years later?
No, the 300 or 400 yards more.
Yeah, but I mean, didn't that, oh, no, they took more. Okay.
Yeah, Bernard Longer can play now and beat almost a bunch, but he just said eventually he can't compete because of the yardage it's just increased again in subtle times sometimes. But
the biggest thing, I just didn't like about them, and I've loved the Masters, but when they decided to Tiger-proof the course, I thought that was kind of
bullshit.
Yeah, they never did a Nicholas proof it.
Yeah, Nicholas or Arnie proof it.
Sevy proof it or whatever.
Gary Player, like, oh, look at
Tom Watson.
Yeah, watch out for this shifty Australian. He'll get you. You know,
well, there might be a little bit of a feeling after last night that, like, oh, well, that's a chapter closed, but it goes right into Masters Week, and then, you know, eventually it'll just be baseball. It'll just be baseball, but you do have the Masters, so I'm sure you guys are excited about that, and there are a few things that are off the radar.
All right, can I bring up the hockey note, Craig? Your uncle, Philip, you know, he's a huge NHL fan. Was it Friday? Something like that? Alex Ovechkin became
Saturday. It was Saturday.
He became the all-time goals scored leader. He broke Gretzky's record. I think he broke it on Saturday or Sunday. One game less than Gretzky. And, of course, he was I think he was 12 when he was an NHL phenom, Garrett, back in the day. Just a huge moment. That's like the all-time home runs leader. That's like the all-time, you know, the rushing yards with Emmett in the NFL. So Gretzky was there with him, said he would shake his hand. He was there when he tied it with a couple of goals, and he was there when he broke it, and said he would be there to shake his hand when he broke his record. Garrett, you're our hockey aficionado.
No, it was awesome. I watched both of the games. I thought I watched the night before when he was chasing it and he tied Wayne Gretzky, and then I watched this game against the Islanders where he broke it. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Now,
by the way, another thing that kind of makes hockey cool is that, like, sometimes other sports, like, I'm not going to go and be there, like, that's their thing, and it's their personal choice. But
it's like Mercury Morris roots for every NFL team to lose games so that the Dolphins can be the only unbeaten team ever.
Those kind of things.
Bottle of champagne.
But, like, Wayne, and then there's some people that are, like, so protective of their records that they don't, like, acknowledge it. Look, Babe Ruth's widow, like, wanted to kill Roger Maris because he was going to break that record. I
think she wasn't the only one.
No
one wanted Babe Ruth's record.
But she was a big part of it because, like, she's very public. Like, well, his widow doesn't want the record to be gone. And, like, we should have asked the 30 other girls he was banging when they were married. But But Wayne Gretzky's like, look, Gordie Howe came. He was at every game when I was getting close to breaking his record. I'm doing that as well. And, you know, Gretzky his nickname is the friggin' Great One. Yeah. So he could have very well been like, nah, I'm the Great One. I don't need to say anything. Like it was very cool.
Well, going back to the Gordie Howe thing, like he mentioned how his wife, Gordie Howe's wife, had given his wife a prize with this, so they did the same thing here where they passed this on, and his wife gave Ovechkin's wife a gift and everything. So they made a big deal out of it. It was awesome.
Top 5 goal scorers now with Ovechkin, Wayne Gretzky, Jaromir Jagr, Mark Messier, and Gordie Howe. Those were the guys that, as far as goals. Now, one note about Gretzky. This was from Chris Vanini. Wayne Gretzky had more career assists than any other player has career points. Think about that. Now, we're talking about goal scorers, that Ovechkin's broken that record, but Gretzky had 1,963 assists, which is, like, insane. That's like Nicholas with majors has the most with 18, but he also has, like, 25 or 30 runner-ups in majors. Not just winning, but also being the runner-up quite a bit. So I saw that moment. It was awesome. And Alex Ovechkin, now the all-time goal scorer in hockey NHL history. When we come back, a couple of nuggets to get to. Craig will help focus in on the Virginia Cavaliers football schedule. We'll have that. And a note or two, one of our viewers texted me about collective bargaining. Now, again, we're not going to go back down the rabbit hole, but he used to be an interview, like he was in between the union and businesses, and he gave me his idea on that. We'll have that and more. Love to hear from you in the chat. And this is 365 Sports. Don's Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco. 48-foot walk-in humidor. A bunch of great brands of cigars. Padron and Cohiba. I had a friend of mine who went down to Cabo for 3 or 4 days on a vacation. And, they got the real Padron, the real Cohiba. And he kind of slid through, I guess you could say, with a couple of cigars that are Cuban cigars, which are incredibly good. And Don Humidor, they don't have those, but they have Padron and they have Cohiba. They have the great names that are nationally and internationally renowned as far as rated as the best cigars in the world. Plus, they have Vita Dreams, the CBD that will help you at night get some sleep. And on top of that, whatever you want when it comes to chronic pain. Don Chumador and Coffee Beans with Joshua and Cheyenne in the Town West Shopping Center off Valley Mills and Richland Drive in Waco.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
We are rolling through various conferences. Well, I don't know about rolling. I think we are trudging through the ACC because there's been some interruptions. But
I would say trudging isn't the right thing. Strolling.
No, I don't think so. I think it's been
trudge.
It's been an effort.
Well, if we can, let's bump it up to a stroll.
Who's next after we have Virginia today, Garrett? How many?
Hold on a second. Don't be calling it trudging when it was your idea to extend this past the Big 12.
No, I'm not blaming this on anybody, but maybe Andrew. But who's next besides Virginia?
We'll have Virginia Tech, and then Wake Forest, and then I think we need to do Notre Dame and take that into the Big Ten, with Notre Dame being a fringe team that plays both of those conferences.
I don't care because it's taken forever. A lot of it's been my fault. But Craig missing time, that slowed us down, so I'll blame
You're
it on
going to be
him.
begging for this in mid-July.
No,
You're going to be complaining about.
No, by mid-July we'll be in Frisco.
No. You're going to be begging for.
But we still have 30-something teams left. That's another 5 or 6 weeks, right?
Yeah, we're already good. Again, I think stroll, and then maybe if we can get from stroll up to jaunt. If we can get to a jaunt,
kind of like you walk, you jog, and you run.
Yeah,
and
but we don't need to
sprint.
run through them or sprint through them, but jaunt would be good.
All right, so
you know what? You and that guy who asked why we're talking about whoever we were talking about the other week, y'all can sit this one out, and we can do the schedule.
Oh, MC Gusto. Was that MC Gusto? Yeah. All right. No, whoever it was about. Why are you talking about Syracuse?
Syracuse. Yeah.
Well, Craig Smoak, this was your idea. It always seems to, especially on Tuesdays, give you off the radar, so Virginia, the Cavaliers.
I try to come up with bits, man, and this is one that's been rolling on along, and I got to be honest with you guys.
Sludging.
What do y'all think of when y'all think of Virginia football? Because, and this is not to dog on this, but here's what I think of. I don't. Like that's the thought that I had was I was like, what do I think of when I think of Virginia football? And I realized I was like, I don't ever think of Virginia football. And you're in the ACC, like, and you probably.
FSU hardly plays them anymore like they used to when they first got in the league. They play them this year, but
is that one of those SEC 18 years later? You play
it's
them
like
again?
you figure like they were FSU's first ever ACC loss. That's what I remember about them. And then like I remember Tiki and Rondé Barber, Thomas Jones.
Jones. Well, here's one thing about them, Craig. When you bring that up, they have 5 conference titles that they've been playing since like in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And their last was in '95. And they had a division title when they split the conference divisions in 2019. That's about it.
Well, there's 2 reasons why I feel like I've heard about them the most over the last year or 2, and one of them I'll get to in a moment. The first one, though, is because I feel like they get brought up in realignment when you start to do the big, what could the SEC do next, or what would the Big Ten do next, like that whole thing that's been going on now for a while. This is a team that you're like, oh, the academics and the geography and the history and the this and the that. And then it's like, yeah, but what about the actual football? Mm-hmm. The football, I don't really think of much. And, well, there's reason why, guys. The biggest story going on this year is their head coach is very much on the hottest of hot seats. It is win or go home for Tony Elliott, who is entering
Clemson phenom, right?
Who is entering year 4. After going 3-7, 3-9, and then last year 5-7. They have not made a bowl game in his 3 seasons since taking over for Bronco Mendenhall. They didn't make a bowl game the last couple of years of Bronco Mendenhall, which did include the COVID year. But since the COVID year, which is now 5 seasons, they've been 0-5 in the postseason. Prior to COVID, they had made 3 straight bowl games. But, they have not been in a big game in the postseason since 2019. And to be fair, that was a big game. It was the Orange Bowl, which they lost that year with Bronco Mendenhall at the helm. But, it's been tough sledding for Tony Elliott, who did see a 2-game increase on the first couple of years, but still a game short of the postseason. So this is not a breakdown. This is an on-paper exercise to just kind of see what's what when it comes to their schedule. And so let's start off with Saturday, August the 30th, as you see on your screens here. They open up at home against Coastal Carolina. That is followed by a road trip, getting ACC right out of the gates here. NC State on the road on Saturday, September the 6th. Then on Saturday, September 13th, at home against William and Mary. And then the following week, you get Stanford, another ACC opponent there, although let's see it later on. So although you don't have a break just yet, you've already been perusing through it and out of the conference here in this first month. So you get Stanford there on September 20th, and then you finally close out that first month, and you will do so with your only non-Saturday game of the year, which is a Friday night contest, as we see more and more of those, especially for the ACC and the Big 12, and it will be those pesky Florida State Seminoles at home. So 3 straight home games for the Virginia Cavaliers. 4 of their first 5 games are at home to start the schedule. So from August 30th through the month of September, Coastal at home, NC State on the road, William and Mary, Stanford, Florida State on a Friday, all at home, and we will break there before we get into the month of October.
Just my first glance at this, this being a very make-or-break year for Tony Elliott, Chandler Morris, coming in to play quarterback and all that, this is not a bad run-up to the bye week to maybe get some momentum if they are improved, because you don't have a lot of teams on this schedule that for sure are going to be good. I mean, Louisville's the best team on the schedule in the first part of the year. So right now on paper. Now because we don't know, but there's so many questions, and the team that would be the best is 2-10 last year, so that's out the window. And then you've got a good run up. If they don't do well, if they don't have a winning record out of this, then I think you know what kind of team this is. Man, I tell you what, Stanford, that's one of those long road trips. We, of course, have broke down Stanford. Man, that's a long way. And Washington State, which you're going to get into.
But I do need to mention as well of these games, the NC State game is a non-conference game.
Well, see,
So-
I understand it's going to keep playing, but I hate that.
It is a non-conference game.
Damn.
As they are just, I guess, a victim of the scheduling because of all the realignment. So with the ACC format that prioritizes what? Playing everybody more frequently. This is a way to get that done and accomplished. And so as a part of that, they scheduled this as a non-conference game. So it's not a part of like the conference putting this forth. And that will happen not only this year, but also next year. So, yeah, an ACC non-conference matchup between Virginia and NC State there in week number 2. So that's definitely of interest as you start to kind of look ahead. So there is 3 non-cons, and then Stanford to open your actual ACC play, and then Florida State, and that was the month of September and the tail end of August. Now getting into October, they are on the road to open the month of October, and they are at Louisville, who was 9-4 a year ago. So this is based on last year's results, which don't automatically carry over. But to your point, this is the first big team that they're playing that was good a year ago.
And I think they've upgraded at the position they needed to. I think Miller Moss is better than Tyler Shuck, and I think that they're going to be pretty salty. I think they're going to be a tough out. Yeah.
So that game against Louisville will then lead them into their first open week on Saturday, October the 11th. So that is, 6 consecutive games to start the year. Non-con at NC State, Florida State, at Louisville. You do, as you mentioned, get Stanford at home, so you don't have to go cross-country. But when they come back on October the 18th, it will be Washington State, continuing out the non-con schedule there as they get the Cougs from Pullman, who were 8-5 a year ago. Then the following week, it's back to ACC play, and they are back on the road as they will take on Bill Belichick and North Carolina. And I must say, as much as we respect Mac Brown, just saying Bill Belichick does at least add some mustard to that North Carolina game that otherwise we might just kind of go over. But now you go like, well, they play Bill Belichick in North Carolina, so that does add something at least for off-season talk. And so they will play the Tar Heels on the road, and then after playing on pretty much the East Coast, they will go all the way to the other side of the country the following week on Saturday, November the 1st, and they will play at Cal, who was a bowl team a year ago. The following week, after trips to North Carolina and then Cal, a lot of jet miles, they will be back at home against Wake Forest, and then the following week, they go back on the road for the 3rd time in the past month, and they will take on the Duke Blue Devils, and that will leave them with one more bye week and then a final game that we will get to. But that second stretch, Washington State non-con at home, at UNC, at Cal, Wake Forest at home, at Duke.
Look, if Tony Elliott thinks this team is going to be better, this schedule is set up for them to be better, to get to a bowl game, to be 7-5. I mean, I think that should probably save his job. I don't know if they're better than 7-5, but a schedule with teams, look, Stanford doesn't have a coach. You play William and Mary. Coastal, not sure about them this year, although I'm sure that will actually be one of their tougher games. North Carolina, first year with Bill Belichick. Cal, don't really know how that's going to go. Wake Forest, new coach there. So, Virginia, and then we'll talk about the next one. Duke and Louisville right now, I'm looking at this are the games that I'm like, well, that's tough. And then the rest of them, I don't really know about.
If this was Clemson's schedule, people would be
declaring furious.
Yeah. So they get the open date, and then I'll get to who they don't play that's of note. But they do finish out after their second bye week, which maybe this is playing for a bowl berth or who knows where they are at this point, but they will close things out at home against Virginia Tech. So the big rivalry, Virginia Tech, they're at home to close things out, and that is the 2025 Virginia football schedule that you see on your screen there that we just ran down. Of note of who they don't play, and just correct me if I'm missing one, but they don't have Clemson. They don't have Syracuse. They don't have Miami. They don't have Georgia Tech. They don't have Pitt. Boston College. I mean,
SMU.
No SMU. I almost forgot. No SMU, no Clemson, no Miami, no Syracuse, no Georgia Tech. I mean, that's a pretty damn good draw if you were looking to avoid most of the better teams from a year ago. You're pretty much avoiding all of them with the exception of, I guess Louisville. I mean, but other than that, like you're basically not playing all of the top teams.
They're rivals
on paper,
right? They're rivals. By the way, when George Welsh was there, they were pretty good. They had a nice run. They were ranked quite a bit. He was there for quite some time. Their 4 biggest rivals, according to Wikipedia: North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Florida State, and Maryland. Their overall record against their 4 biggest rivals, and they did play Florida State quite a bit. They're 4-14 against the Seminoles. They've won 133 games and lost 187 against their 4 biggest rivals. The closest is North Carolina is pretty close as far as the rivalry. They've had 1 season where they won 10 games. And so when you say, what do you think about when you think about Virginia? I think about, no question, basketball, lacrosse, things like that. But they're man, and it's not. They've won 10 games once in 1989.
And for Ted and Richmond or whoever like might come across that clip and be offended, look, I know people in Virginia aren't thinking about TCU or Baylor or Texas Tech, so I totally get it. And it's flipped. But, yeah, it dawned on me while I was kind of drumming this up of like, man, I just don't think about Virginia football in the slightest. And, yeah, there's been a Thomas Jones or a guy here and there that you think of. But for the most part, they're just kind of there, but they get brought up because of their tradition and their history and all of that, as an institution. When it comes to some of these, like, where could they end up one day? They're in a good spot as far as that goes, seemingly. But, yeah, not a lot on the results side, but there is their schedule. I think, if Tony Elliott can't make a bowl game with this schedule, Paul, then I don't know if he's ever going to make a bowl. I mean, you don't play a lot of the best teams, at least that we think.
Let's take it back on Virginia. Jim Grove is a former alum of Virginia.
He wasn't. But you know what?
He's our guy.
He should have probably been their coach. They might have been better off.
Yeah, and he also voted against Florida State, apparently.
Well, I mean,
as everybody did.
He didn't apologize. He still hasn't apologized.
Best players: Tiki Barber, Rondé Barber. Yeah. Aaron Brooks played quarterback in the NFL. Thomas Jones. Patrick Kearney, pretty damn good player. Chris Long was a hell of a player. Herman Moore. And Heath Miller, a good tight end, played for the Steelers. DeBrickashaw Ferguson. So they've had some players. But, man, it's a very scattered amount of success that they've had.
I mean, I know that there's other leagues examples. But, yeah, having NC State as a non-con game is just – that's weird. That's weird, but that's where realignment took us, I suppose. So there you go. There's the Virginia 2025 football glimpse in or look in or however you want to, I guess the on-paper exercise that we're doing. I keep using that because that's what it is. But next up will be Virginia Tech, I guess, whenever we get to that tomorrow or later this week.
If Garrett will keep us on track and not get off. So Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, and then Notre Dame?
Yep.
And Notre Dame.
All right, so we'll be able to clear out the ACC by the end of the week. And it's been quite the run. All right, when we come back, John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist. Craig, thank you very much. Thanks to Andrew Valade, who's back there. We never know. Emery Winter, who's already working on 365 Sports tonight, and they do a lot of other things as well, throwing out different segments and clips, etc. Thank you very much. This is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Marco's Pizza. Marco's Pizza online this week only. 50% off on all menu price pizza. Every one of them. Anything that's on the online, all menu price pizza. You take advantage of it, use the code word of hot deal. 50% off for this week only from now through April the 13th. Also, they have the Crowd Pleaser. Feeds 5 for less than $5 a person. 2 medium, 1 topping pizzas, cheesy bread, center squares for just $24.99. Order now and use the code word FEEDS. They also have a lunch special if you want just a little snack or a nice little bite to get you through lunch. Any Pizzoli and 20-ounce bottle of Pepsi for $7.99. Oh, my goodness, the triple pepperoni Magnifico, loaded with pepperoni. You get thick crust or thin crust, whatever crust you want, and they will deliver it to you. Go online, Marcos.com, Marcos Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? by not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference, and that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
1, 2.
I'm in love with a man named Rudy. I'm okay with that. He knows exactly what I want. He keeps me coming back. He cooks breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me. Does the dishes too. I'm in love with a man named Rudy. Last name Barbecue. It sure is easy to fall in love with Rudy's tasty oak smoked barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Hall of Fame columnist John McClain joins us most every Tuesday around 5:30, and that's what time it is, 5:35. And John, I cannot imagine the feeling in Houston, Texas after the Cougars was so close, a team that always closed it out. I was sick for them. I was numb about it even when I woke up. What has been the feeling in Houston?
Gloom and doom, as you can imagine. And I think it's very interesting. If it had been the Longhorns or the Aggies, there would have been a lot of people against them just because people root against the Longhorns and Aggies. But Kelvin Sampson and the Cougars, you know, they're a class act. They play hard. Now, I'm not talking about the last 3 minutes. They play smart, and they don't spend a lot of NIL money except for LJ Cryer 3 years ago. And mainly it's because Sampson almost has throwback basketball, diving for loose balls, and they were so cool as cucumbers throughout the season. No matter what situation happened at the end, they didn't get intimidated. They were up for the task. Duke being a great example. The way they beat Duke at the end in one of the all-time great comebacks. And then what happens? For the only time this season, they cratered at the end. The last 3 minutes of basketball was horrible. 19 seconds was inexcusable. They had 4 turnovers in a row, 3 in which they didn't get off a shot. LJ Cryer, the first, he goes under the basket for some reason. He's not that kind of player. And on the next series, Emmanuel Sharp had 3 guys on him, dribbled the ball off of his leg. And so they did things they hadn't done. And when you look back at it, they won a game they should have lost Duke. And they lost a game they should have won Florida. And people feel terrible about it down here. You know, I went to Baylor. I'm a Baylor fan. But I felt horrible when Lorenzo Charles put the ball back in the net and beat Five Slamma Jim and Jim Valvano ran all over the court looking for somebody to hug. I felt terrible for them then, and I feel terrible for them now.
That Valvano game, I brought this up, that really, Magic and Larry Bird were huge for the NCAA tournament, but that Valvano game began the Cinderella stuff. That began what became March Madness, don't you think?
Yes, and the greatest team ever assembled to not win the championship, Five Slamma Jamma with 4 first-round picks and 2 Hall of Famers, and Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler to lose to NC State like that. There's been a lot of upsets, and that was one of the biggest. And I think, too, was that game in Albuquerque?
I think it was. Because I don't know whether they played the game against Georgetown the next year and lost because Georgetown was starting their run. But I would believe you're probably right at the pit. Yep.
Well, I can't remember, David, what was the first Final Four they played in a football stadium. Because I'm sure, like the Houston-Duke semifinal game was the most exciting. I'm not saying the best, but the most exciting game I've ever seen in college basketball. Five Slamma Jamma versus the Doctors of Dunk. There's never been another game like that. And so I kind of think the nation took notice. It was boring when UCLA was winning every year in the 60s under John Wooden. But, boy, when Houston lost that game, it was the ultimate David Goliath story.
It was Albuquerque, by the way, 83.
By the way, the first one was UCLA beat Villanova in the Astrodome in 1971.
1970, wow.
Didn't Elvin Hayes in Houston play Alcindor and
in Waco.
UCLA? I thought they played that in the Dome. They didn't play that in the Dome?
No, they played that in the Dome. I'll never forget. The Rockets drew so bad here, they played some home games in Waco and San Antonio. And that year, 71, I think it's 71 when the Lakers won 33 consecutive games.
Mm-hmm.
And they won the championship with Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain and Gail Goodrich. And they played a home game in the heart of Texas Coliseum. And I was there against the Cougars, and the Cougars beat them with Elvin Hayes out playing Chamberlain. But no, you're right. They played that game here, in which they won. Then when they played in the playoffs, the UCLA annihilated them.
Yeah, that's when Wooden had his, 9 or 10 of 11. John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist with us on 365 Sports. Pablo?
John, a couple of weeks, and we will be Green Bay will be the NFL draft. What at 25, because they don't have a ton of picks, the Texans. What at 25 and early on do they need to make sure they come away with?
They brought in 4 new offensive linemen because the offensive line, not the run blocking, but the pass protection, was the worst thing they had. The Texans have a Super Bowl defense. They don't have a Super Bowl offense because they couldn't protect C.J. Stroud. It's one thing for sacks, 52 sacks, and he created some of those. Tight ends, running backs allowed some, but they were beaten off the ball 42% of the time. Meaning when the ball was snapped, at least one defensive lineman charged across the line of scrimmage. That was by far the worst in the NFL. So they brought in 2 new guards, 2 new tackles. None of them, if they were available, if they were any good, they wouldn't be available. Now, I don't think for a second Kelvin Banks Jr. is going to drop down there, although for some reason, some have him dropped. Maybe he doesn't look good in shorts and a T-shirt. I don't know. I don't know at this point. It's one thing for Ted McMillan of Arizona to say he doesn't watch tape, doesn't care about football, that kind of stuff, which his agent has got to be going absolutely bat, you know what. But for a guy like Banks, why is he dropping? So I still think they need an offensive lineman and get a receiver in the second round. They still need a receiver, but they better get a cornerstone in the line because they traded their best one, Laramie Tunsil, for 4 draft choices to this year. And I'd love to see Banks available. The only thing I know for sure is Cam Ward's going number 1.
Yeah, and he's won at Tennessee. Now, I want to bring this up about Tunsil. We brought this up when they traded him to Washington. They need to protect Jaden Daniels. They need offensive line help. But, they were really good. But how many years left does he have? Was that a good deal for both teams or not?
Well, first of all, people are wondering, why in the world would they trade their best pass protector? Now, he's going to be 31 years old. Now, this is mainly the reason. Tunsil, in the 2 times he signed extensions here after being traded in 2019 for basically 2 1s and a 2 by Bill O'Brien, both of those extensions have made him the highest paid lineman in history. And he's making noise about wanting another one. And if he doesn't get what he wants, I think they thought they'd never see him. He might cause problems. And they need that money for young players. And they could have waited until after next season when then he would be turning 32. But I think for what you want for Jaden Daniels, he's blocked for Watson. He's blocked for C.J. Stroud. He's not a very good run blocker, but that's okay. So I think that was a really good deal for them. But then they got money to pay, so they're going to have to be prepared to shell out a lot of money for Laremy Tunsil.
All right, Paul Catalina, David Smoak, Craig Smoak with John McClain, 365 Sports.
John, another week and another Cowboys kind of silly thing. We didn't get to ask you about Micah Parsons last week and Jerry trying to circumvent the system, and it's kind of silly. But I think, and you should pitch this to some of your Cowboys writer friends, somebody needs to write a book on all the Jerry contract mistakes he's made over his 30-plus years of owning the Cowboys.
Now, Paul, do you know that would be really something you could write about that nobody's ever heard of? Nobody's ever read about it. Nobody's ever talked about it. Do you really believe, Paul, that people are going to buy a book talking about Jerry Jones and contracts when we hear it almost every day? I feel bad for you guys being in a Cowboys town, and thank God for Baylor for you. But having to talk about Jerry Jones and his contract philosophy, they'll get it worked out with Micah Parsons, and they always do. But they could have done it this time last year and got him for $30 million. And people would have gone, oh, my God, $30 million? They're paying him $30 million. Then they're going to pay Dak $60, but now it's going to cost them over $40. They'll pay it. He'll be a great player. And but I think the last thing people want to read, and I know you're kidding, I hope you are, the last thing they're going to want to read is more about Jerry Jones and his contract negotiation philosophy. Every time I hear it, and I hear it on almost every show I do every week, it wants to make me vomit.
Please write it, Paul.
You know what?
I think it's like crack for some people.
I'm going to throw some of the salacious stuff in the middle. So, it'll get boring when you're talking about – because here's the thing, John. I think – and I'm not trying to belittle NFL agents here, but the job is easier now than it ever was because really what you do is you take the contract – so David Mulgeta can just take Myles Garrett's contract and then they just kind of formulate it to the Cowboys and then move on. He doesn't have to start from scratch. It's not like he's, in an office with a ton of boxes going through it. It's way easier than it seems. And that's the thing I think that it's funny because they act like this is hard, but no one else thinks it is.
Well, you just said it in 30 seconds. Why the hell would you need to read a book?
There you go.
To find out about it.
But here's one
You're
thing.
You're exactly right. Max Crosby signed for the most 35. Now, why Myles Garrett got 40 instead of 36 is beyond me. But when you put 40 out there, Micah Parsons is going to get that average to 41. It's a done deal. I don't even know why. You should call him and say, here's what he's going to get. Sign it now so we don't have to talk about it anymore.
One chapter would have to be called The Glory Hole, Paul, and that could go in different directions.
I think that's actually the book. I think that's actually the book is finding out why he says that all the time.
Yeah.
That one to me would be more interesting.
I'll never forget I was in Oxnard the first time he said it. Now, the whole place went, what?
Rich Dalrymple made it worse because he comes up and says it's an oil term, and then Jerry goes, not in my book.
Not in my book, yeah. John.
Well, Jerry, I would say that Jerry's drilled enough to know, but I won't.
John, one thing on the quarterback, Cam Ward won to Tennessee. How deep can Shedeur fall?
If you're a Cleveland Browns fan, are you pumped about Kenny Pickett being your quarterback? I don't think so, which means you're going to need another one next year in what looks like a deeper draft. I think they're talking about New Orleans trading up for him. He's visiting with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh can't trade up high, but if indeed he starts to fall, that's when they do it. I'm thinking the Giants. It's the only reason the Giants wouldn't take him. And if you have him rated in your top 10 and you're picking second or third, take him. You need a quarterback if he's a top 10. But if he's not rated a first-round pick, don't take him. And, we saw him a lot the last 2 years watching Colorado. And then I can go into the most disappointing play of Baylor's season, and maybe one of Baylor's recent seasons, maybe one of the most disappointing plays in Baylor history, was engineered by Shedeur Sanders and still makes me sick.
All right, John, thank you very much. The draft later this month. It's going to be fun. The schedule's eventually released and so much more. We appreciate your time as always, man.
Sick 'em Bears.
That's John McClain, Hall of Fame NFL columnist with us on Tuesdays with so many stories to talk about every single week. All right, when we come back, we're not done. Tomorrow, I want to give you a tease about some of the guests we have tomorrow. Lance Leipold, KU football coach. Corey Coleman, now on the TCU staff, former Baylor Biletnikoff Award, first-round pick and All-American. Eric Galko and John Cooper on the NFL draft. And then also our Masters picks we'll have tomorrow with the first round coming up on Thursday. One note about the first round of the Masters, I would not have guessed this, but the first round of the Masters, there's a research survey, etc. There's less productivity in the office on the first round of the Masters Thursday than there is on the first round of the NCAA tournament. I thought that'd be very quickly, but there's like nearly 90-something% less productivity on the Thursday of the Masters each year. That we'll have more with Rob Bolton and discuss that with him tomorrow. Did you guys, what would you have thought?
March Madness, but yeah.
Probably March Madness.
Yeah, me too. Because, well, I mean, it's just, you're salivating for that, as we are tomorrow, Thursday, with the Masters. This is 365 Sports.
You spent hours selecting your patio sofa. Choosing that grill would have taken weeks. Probably your car needed way more time. For sure, you would have spent months mulling over that pool of yours. Protecting your prized possessions needs no time, though. Just visit coversandall.com, create a custom size per your requirements, pick a fabric and personalize your cover, and leave the rest to us. Premium protection for all that you love.
You might ask yourself what functional mushrooms are good for. Whether it's lion's mane, cordyceps, turkey tail, shiitake, reishi, they all serve a purpose.
You have ones for neurological health, ones for sleeping and gut health and all these different areas. They pack a powerful punch.
Functional mushrooms are, of the millions of mushrooms and fungi out there, the ones that we can actually ingest and benefit from as humans.
Like all adaptogens, they kind of adapt to what you need at the time that you need them.
We don't even really know that we're suffering. We just don't quite feel right. That's where these adaptogens come in and really start to close the gap and really start getting us closer to how we want to feel.
Functional mushrooms have definitely re-energized me and helped me face each day with a new vigor for life.
Learn ways that functional mushrooms can help you. Go to getumble.com.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Ticket Club. Forget the fees, just big savings. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5 today. Top 5 best coaches never to win a title. We're going to go through major sports, college and professional. My apologies to the NHL, Garrett. I'll have to do an addendum to this.
Okay.
And add them. I feel bad because there's somebody that deserves to be on this list that's not, but it's the top 5 and not the top 6. I got to play to the audience a little bit here. Number 5, Jerry Sloan. This is a dude who had John Stockton and Karl Malone, just had him at the wrong time. They won a ton of games. They won Western Conference titles, but the Bulls existed. Jerry Sloan was this young and this brilliant in coaching now. He might have 7 titles. Who knows? But sadly, Jerry Sloan and the Utah Jazz have no rings, and that's because Michael Jordan exists. So, my apologies to Utah Jazz fans for having a guy that was this good at coaching, but never getting over that line. Number 4, Felipe Alou, longtime Major League Baseball manager, had a ton of wins, well respected, and when he was the manager of the Expos, he had one of the best teams ever created. He had Pedro Martinez and Larry Walker, and they were Andres Galarraga. They were dominant in 1994. Then the strike ruined us possibly getting a 400 hitter. Ruined Chuck Knobloch maybe setting a record for hits. Matt Williams maybe breaking the home run record. And the Expos and their run to a World Series. Now, of course, they're the Washington Nationals, and they have won one. Felipe Alou wasn't there, and they weren't in Montreal. Sacré bleu. Number 3, in the NFL, Marv Levy. This one is obvious. 4 straight Super Bowls, no titles. Scott Norwood misses the kick. Look, maybe if he makes it, they never go back. But then he kept running it up into the best teams in franchise history of the NFC East. Maybe the best Giants team in the franchise history. Maybe. I mean, they've had good ones. Maybe the best Washington team in their history was in 1992. Then 2 of the best Cowboy teams ever, back to back. One blowout and one that just wasn't close after halftime. Deserved better, but again, born at the wrong time. One of the all-time greats. Everybody loved playing for Marv, but no jewelry. Number 2, In college football, it's Bill Snyder. Sir Parker and Texas A&M snatched away his best opportunity to play for one, and they had a couple others. If things had gone their way, might have been in the national championship figure. And certainly, had there been a playoff back when Kansas State was at its peak under Bill Snyder, they'd have been in it several times. And with the way that he coached and they played, would not have been surprised to see him win one. But college football is the most unforgiving when it comes to coaches who were great. They're not winning national titles because the system has never been diverse enough to let more than several coaches win multiple national titles because it was both based totally on voting. And there were only 2 teams that got in every year to any kind of postseason, and the rest was all for show. But Bill Snyder, and the reason I picked Bill Snyder over Bo Schembechler, who has more wins, is Bo Schembechler was the coach at Michigan. Bill Snyder took over the historically worst program in college football history. Historically worst ever. They crowned a lot of homecoming queens and made them into what they are still even today. His coaching job at Kansas State is one of the most impressive in the history of college athletics, nay, athletics in general. And number one, even though there's several guys in college basketball that fit this, I really do think it's Kelvin Sampson. He's been able to keep the same style, keep players bought in for years and years and years over his career. Had some great teams at Oklahoma that maybe, if he doesn't get run out there, he can maybe build something there. Has had some great teams at Houston, Final Fours, Elite Eights last night, and just has not gotten over the line. I cannot tell you how much respect I have for Kelvin Sampson as a coach and what he's done in building a program there at Houston. I hope he gets another chance to do this because last night was heartbreaking, and it's going to live with Houston fans until the moment that they finally get one. And if there's ever a coach who deserved a ring for what he means to a university and what he means to a sport, to me it's Kelvin Sampson. But alas, it was not to be. And the dirty, disgusting Florida Gators took away something that was rightfully his. I say that as a bitter, bitter person who knows that this is not a rational thought. I won't say congratulations because it kills me. It kills me. But I'm very sad for Kelvin Sampson. Just gutted for the Houston fans. And that is going to do it for this Top 5. See you later.